Good evening all, it's the old geek here, and I have been messing with settings, so I'm not sure how well this is going to come through. I was playing around with the idea that I could show bits of my screen and stuff as we go through the book, but I've only got one monitor, so I decided not to do that because it could go all over the place. So if you can just confirm in the chat that I'm coming through loud and clear and looking young and handsome as always, that would be wonderful. Anybody? Anybody? I do appear to have two people in chat. What do you say? Hello, Rodrigo, Beowulf, and Halakar. Thank you, Halakar. Thank you. And it looks like there's 10 people watching, so there's 8 lurkers. And yeah, cheers, Brian. Yeah, and Stuart Webb. I've not seen you before. Are you a newbie? Right. I was sat at work today thinking, what should I talk about tonight? It's Wednesday. They'll be used to me streaming on a Wednesday. So, right, Captain. Yeah, let's talk about something a little bit divisive, as Halakar has already said here. Yes, Unearthed Arcana. Yes. A book that changed the face of D&D. I think it's fair to say that. Just to know, if you've got used to me doing streams on a Wednesday, I won't be here next Wednesday because I'm going to be watching Tool next Wednesday. So it's a choice of talking to you lot or listening to Maynard and all the others. I'm going to go listen to Maynard, I'm afraid. Right. You know what? I'm just gonna page through the book and I'm gonna say what I think of it. Okay. I'll let you know that's my copy. It's not my original. I bought this one on eBay a couple of years ago, and it's nice and solid. Hasn't fallen to bits. My original will be in a skip somewhere. I'm reading through the introduction, and I can already see that the book is bigging itself up. We know for a fact, and it sort of admits this, that Unearthed Arcana was pretty much a collection of Dragon magazine articles that they sifted through and put in, and they're going all about all this new stuff. Most of it had been in Dragon magazine. Some of it had come from the books modules. I mean, Lost Caverns of Sojkant, there were some items and spells and things which then went on to appear in here. Right. But let's start with the beginning. If you've got any questions, chime in. I don't know how far I'm going to get through the book because it depends on how chatty you all are. Whether you just want to listen to me talk nonsense or whether you want to join in and ask me things, you can join in and chat as well if you want. The invite is in the Discord. The first page, really, of changes was the addition of a stat called comeliness. Did anybody in chat ever use it for more than a week? Anybody? What was the point of it, other than giving another mechanic that was unnecessary? I just let my players choose what their characters look like. It doesn't depend on their charisma. Comeliness and charisma are two completely different things. You can be charismatic and hideously ugly. You can be as dull as ditch water, and you can be of model looks. Comeliness. A girl in my group had it as a primary stat. Is that in real life or is that for a character? Right, Captain. Yeah, you've already said you've not got Unearthed Arcana. It was. I should go back to the beginning. 1985, Unearthed Arcana was released. 1983, I started playing D&D. 1984, I got my Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide. 1985, I got Unearthed Arcana. So it all sort of mashed into one for me. And of course, I was 13 or 14. And I thought, yeah, new stuff like they do nowadays. Only now, looking back at it with a bit of experience, I realized that it could be a bit ropey in places. 14 years old, 15 years old, probably. I would guess so. Yeah. So the whole idea with comeliness is it was just quite simply your physical attractiveness. I think it was pointless having this. No, 19. Well, she was mature then, at least. That's good. Your comeliness, you'd roll 3d6 for comeliness, and you would adjust it by race, and you'd adjust it by your charisma bonus. And the chances are you might have the ability to make people look at you and go, "Wit woo, you're fit," and all that sort of thing. 10 to 13 was average. I imagine most of us nerds are in the 7 to 9 range. And people start paying attention to you when you've got 14 or more. Just let the characters, let the players have their character look like whatever they want. I mean, look at, I don't know if you Americans know Katie Price, when she's a model in the UK. When she was 20, before she had various parts of her body changed with plastic stuff, she was gorgeous, but she's got nothing between the ears. She's stupid as hell and really irritating. So the comeliness and charisma are nothing to do with each other. Right, okay. Right. Yeah. Those who had Dragon magazines, it formalized a lot of stuff from Dragon magazine. It does go on in the beginning about, this has all been play tested. This has all been really thoroughly play tested. Those in the know will know that is nonsense. It hasn't. Yes. Trying to get freebies. I work in a shop. We get girls trying to do that all the time. I'm not going to ask what you've done to get the judge to say, "Oi, join the army." I'll maybe ask you in some private chat sometime if you want to tell me. I heard the binding was horrible. This one's perfectly solid. My original one was perfectly solid. Maybe I've just been lucky. So I've already said comeliness, forget it. The next thing it did is it added in a lot of new races to the game. It split, it added in the Duergar as a playable race, the Grey Dwarf. It added in, here we go. It added in Drow Elves as a playable race. This is the book to blame. I should hurl it out the window. Along with Valley Elves and Wild Elves, I haven't got too much of an issue with those, but Point Grey, High and Wood were fine as they were. It added in Deep Gnomes. Look, unless you're going to have an entirely underground campaign, Duergar, Deep Gnomes, and Drow Elves, pointless. Absolutely pointless. Keep them as monsters. Keep them as things to meet on your travels. Right. Pages 8 and 9. This is one I see a lot of people chuntering about still. And pages 8 and 9 are the bit where it adjusts class level limitations and what was available, what classes were available to each race. And according to some people, it opened things up wildly. Right. I'm looking at this page now, and yes, it's opened up clerics to most races, because believe it or not, in the original Player's Handbook, most races didn't have playable clerics. In fact, it was just, if we look at it, half orcs, clerics level 4, half elves, clerics level 5, humans unlimited, and dwarfs, elves, and gnomes, NPCs. That's fine. Adding clerics to dwarves, in particular, I think is perfect, because I think your dwarf of Moradin bashing things with his hammer, that's it fits, and of course a fighter cleric, a dwarven fighter cleric is that archetypal hammer wielding plate clad dwarf, lawful good, fighting for honor. And it stops people moaning about dwarves not being able to be paladins, I suppose, as well. But elves, gnomes, yeah, fine. Clerics, these races have their deities in the various books, so let them be clerics. They also say about races being given much higher level caps. Yes, but that is only true if you've somehow got 19, 20, 21, 22 on your key stats. And that just doesn't happen very often. There are a few that have been slightly boosted. The half elf has got a slightly better deal. It can get an extra level of fighter, but most of the others are almost identical in terms of level caps for the races. You just look at dwarfs, for example. Hill dwarfs, well, dwarfs were just dwarfs here, capped at level 9 for a fighter in the player's handbook. Dwarven fighters with less than 17 strength, limited to 7th level, 17 strength, limited to 8th level. Now, if we're looking at Unearthed Arcana, that is true for mountain dwarfs. Exactly the same. Hill dwarfs get a worse deal. They're capped at level 6 if you've only got 15 or 16 strength. So all of that about expanding the level limits and everything isn't really true. Unless you play single class demi-humans, because there is that little hidden rule there where add 2 to all of these level limits if you're playing a single class demi-human. Still, 2 levels is not massive. And I've always believed that if you play a demi-human in AD&D, you should, unless you're playing a thief because they're unlimited, you should primarily be looking at that sort of stereotypical image that fits the race you pick. In basic D&D, the elf was a fighter magic user. So I don't when I play AD&D, I think of an elf as a fighter magic user. It's the norm. And an elven fighter magic user can go to about level 5 fighter, level 10 magic user, and that's absolutely fine. And if you're playing by the book, if you get to level 5, 10, you're doing bloody well. Most characters die before level 3. So just how often do these level caps even come into play? They're there, in my opinion, they are there to encourage demi-humans to be multi-classed and to discourage the power gaming types from playing as demi-humans. Because the power gaming types will look at it and go, I can't get high enough as a demi-human. I'm going to have to play human. And that's a worthwhile aim, because you want those people who are trying to be the best at everything all the time to pick a race that's not overpowered with this delusion that they're going to get to a high level every time, and thus level caps won't affect them. No. Now I'm picked human. So it's fine. It's a win-win. That is an absolute win-win. Me, if I'm playing a halfling, it'll be a fighter thief almost always. If I'm playing an elf, it'll be a fighter mage, maybe a thief magic user. That sort of combination. It's an opportunity when you're playing a demi-human to play these jack of all trades. Basic D&D, the halfling was a fighter thief, the elf was a fighter mage, and the dwarf, well, he was a fighter, but there you go. So let's have a look at it. Yeah. Captain makes a good point here. This is where cleric subclasses should have filled that niche. Orc equals a shaman, elf, druid. Now, elves could be druids in this is one of the additions, I believe. Yes, in Unearthed Arcana they opened up elves to become druids. That wasn't in the original, so that was an addition. The orc shaman, yes, that's, I guess, a 4th level cleric, sort of skinned in a rough way, could function as a shaman. I know there were rules for shamans in other books, but yes, you're right. And 2nd edition sort of went in that direction with the various kits and the idea of creating priests of different mythoses. Anyway, I remember fighter magic user thief. Now, I've never tried to play a triple class character. I had one player who did, and he was extremely tough. But it took him a long time to advance, as it would. This I agree with Halakar. I do wish gnomes could have been a little higher max level as an illusionist. Yes, that fits. That fits nicely. I mean, of course, the gnome thief illusionist is a wonderful, wonderful. Yes, it's a trope, but the idea of that gnome sort of trickster hiding and using little illusions to cover their thievery. Yes, I love that. I love that. A gnome could be illusionist level 7. But it depended on their stats, yes. If they're intelligent, they needed high intelligence and dexterity to get to level 7. And what did they shift to? Gnome illusionists in Unearthed Arcana. They dropped the dexterity limitation to become level 7, but you needed intelligence of above 18 to get any higher, so they're still limited. I agree with Halakar there. I think level 9, level 11 as a gnome illusionist would have been absolutely fine. Now then, DK, look, you play the OSR games, and I don't think you play first edition. And if you look at, for example, basic D&D, where race as class, they were effectively multi-class characters, like the elf was. It was a fighter mage. I don't have a problem with races fitting a predefined sort of trope. You can add enough personality to the class while fitting in with the norms in terms of what they are. My only problem with it is when people choose it purely for power, and that's why I like having the level limits in there to push those irritating power gamers into considering being humans and thus forfeiting all the extra abilities that demi-humans get. Anyway, so pages 8 and 9, the class level limitations, yes, use them. Use them as in the book, and as Halakar says, maybe open the gnomes up a bit further. Use them. They didn't break the game. People are using hyperbole to say, oh, they opened up too much. They didn't. Just cross out the bits of the table that say Dark Elf, because forget Drow. Then forget them as playable races. And yeah, cross out the Duergar bit as well. Get rid of that bit. You don't need that bit. But the rest of it is absolutely fine. And Omanal is exactly right here. Multiclassing was good when having limited players to fill in gaps. Yes, if you've got a small party and you go into AD&D had its niches. It had its specific niches, and characters were designed to fill those niches. And if you've got fewer than 5 players, you're going to be missing certain useful aspects of what characters can do. The amount of time I used to play with 3 or 4 players, and the amount of times we'd play without a mage because we were quite young, and most of my friends just wanted to hit things. And the amount of magic items they were missing out on because they were mage only. They just look at it and think, I'm mage, I'm weak. Without thinking ahead, without planning ahead, they just want. So what are you going to be? I'm going to play a fighter. What are you going to play? I'm going to play a paladin. What are you going to play? I might be a fighter thief. And it's like, oh God, here we go again. Please pick something with spellcasting, a bit of brain that can use the items. But that's just my group when we were early teens. Yep, I never played first edition. Yeah, DK, you need to join my first edition game on a Saturday night and learn. I even see that clerics are basically a fighter magic user. And the dual classing and multi-classing could be interesting, and demi-humans can do this as well. Right. I think AD&D got this bit right in that only humans can dual class and only demi-humans can multi-class. There is a difference. Dual classing is swapping, and you need incredible stats to do that. And multiclassing is playing the two classes at the same time, where you have to split the XP evenly throughout the entire adventuring career. And yeah, that's fine by me. That's absolutely fine by me. I will stick rigidly to that. I didn't have too many issues with them playing clerics, not as much as magic users. Not as much, because clerics could hit things. Do it. Here we go. All right. There was a Reddit post that I chimed in on once. Yeah, I know. And they were talking about first level spells for clerics. And I got downvoted to oblivion for saying that Cure Light Wounds should not be the priority spell, because it is better to use spells that stop the fighters from taking damage in the first place. If I'm playing a cleric, my first choice spells are going to be the likes of Light, Bless, Protection from Evil. Maybe if it was a resist fire or resist cold, if we're going to a region where that's involved, only then will I start thinking about Cure Light Wounds. I mean, if I'm lucky enough to have a high enough wisdom to have four spells at second level, yeah, there'll be a Cure Light Wounds in there. If I've got 3 spells at first level, one might be Cure Light Wounds. But I certainly won't have Cure Light Wounds 3 times, as I've seen clerics do, because they just believe they're a healer. Clerics can be so much more than healers. And when everyone started downvoting me on Reddit for, yeah, I just turned the computer off and walked away, because the idiots, I'm afraid, idiots. Just didn't get it. All stuck in the cleric is a healer mentality. But that's what the other people tend to think. But you need to stand up for clerics and turn around and say, clerics can be so much more. They can bop things pretty hard. They've got decent hit points, decent armor class, and they can protect you. But healing you is a bit, no, I'm not going to do that. Yes. If Chris ever watches one of my, you know, the Ye Old Geek sign on my channel page, that's done by a friend of mine called Chris. He's got his own channel. He's got his own blog page. He calls himself the Crooked Staff. He's very good. Check him out. He played a very, very lawful cleric who made you sign documents before he would heal you, which is it's a great way of doing it. Yes. Convert them to the faith. It's exactly what a cleric should do. Anyway, we'll go back up here. Good. He's still going to play first edition. Yeah. The Chad light spell. You can blind creatures with a light spell. Take them out. Yes, and I think people do, once they realize the effect that spells that don't directly affect hit points can actually have on how the game works. You can have much more fun rather than just looking at all the things that do damage or heal damage. But yes, and I do think an intelligent or a mature, experienced player should always be looking towards things that give the character much more utility. Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, I didn't read the bit which said he was a Jehovah's Witness, so I might have been a bit less gracious in that case. But he's playing his character right. Yeah, that's exactly what a cleric is. A light fighter with defensive magic to help the party. Yes. And, of course, the occasional spiritual weapon to bonk them with. Yes, one of our our cleric in the party in our game on Monday night. He asked if his spiritual weapon when he cast it could be a frying pan, because his character is a cleric, is a temple chef, big overweight cook, likes to bake pies. And yes, his spiritual weapon is a frying pan that he bashes people with. Great. That's exactly great fun. Yeah, those skills appeared in Oriental Adventures and the 2 survival guides, and then became pretty much default in 2nd edition. And in my opinion, they're the best bits of the 2 survival guides. I bought them at the time, thought they'd look great, thought, yeah, I'll be using all of this. And we started playing, and within half an hour, it had all been jettisoned. We kept the skills bit, but everything else was just fluff. But yes, you could get a skill, that's fine. That's fine. Bandaging up the wounds, that's absolutely fine. Right, let's move on. The next few pages, we're describing the new races. I'd be quite happy to get a large bottle of Tipex and abuse the bit on elves for the drow. Then we move on to racial preferences. Non-politically correct. I use them because, of course, I'm old school. And we can see on this table that I can already see that it's wrong, that it's only antipathy from a lot of races towards dark elves or neutrality. It should be hatred, blind hatred. They're normalizing the dark elf already. So whenever you say that, whenever I make the claim that Forgotten Realms and Drizzt Do'Urden, whatever his name is to blame for the whole dark elf nonsense, that's the book that originally did it. Yeah. Right. Character classes and hit dice types and whatever. They didn't proofread it here because they've got the druid's hit dice wrong. I can tell because I've crossed a bit out in pencil in there. And then we move to this whole the character classes and the alignments and what all the character classes can do and what they can wear. I'll come to Cavaliers and Paladins in a bit. They've added a load of new weapons for weapon proficiencies. And largely, I agree with these. Thieves can now use bows, which I don't believe they could in the original. In fact, I'm pretty sure the thief, club, dagger, dart, sling, sword, couldn't use bows. A thief can now use a bow. Quite right, too. And a hand crossbow. Yeah, I have no problem with the thief using a bow. See, bards are quite widely opened up. Clerics are still limited in the same sort of way, and druids, yeah, it's similar sort of weapons. It has specified in here now that thieves can use studded leather and padded leather or elven chain. I don't have a problem with that either, because there are mechanics now a bit later on to show how those armors affect their thief skills. Yes, absolutely fine. So I don't have a problem with this page either. Don't have a problem. So far, it's only been one page I hate. New character classes. This is the best bit for arguments. Cavaliers. First change they've made is they've made the Paladin a subclass of Cavalier. Now, up until recently, if you rolled a good enough stats to become an original Paladin, I would allow you to be a first edition Paladin based on the fighter from the Player's Handbook. Fine. And I would have allowed, if you'd somehow managed to get the ridiculous rolls that are needed to become a Cavalier Paladin, I would have allowed it. Don't think I will now. I don't think I would, because Having run a campaign for a Cavalier, they're fine at low levels, and they become absolute units at once you get about level 6 or 7. They just bludgeon their way through everything. Now think of that character having paladin abilities as well, and yeah, okay. I think if you've got a small party, I'd allow a Cavalier and a Cavalier Paladin. If you've got more than 5 players, they can soak up so much damage. No. Afraid not. Unless you start them off at level 0 and go through all the grind to get to level 1, and you're utterly fragile, and you'll probably die because you'll have about 5 hit points and have to be fearless until you've got about 1,500 hit points. But Cavaliers are absolute madmen. They're berserk, and even with the tenets that they have to follow. So forget the bit about paladins being part of the Cavalier subclass. No, I don't. Keep them separate. Let paladins still be fighters. They made some changes to the druid, but it's only to expand the level from 14 up to 23rd. Yeah, that really happens really often. No, it doesn't. Not if you're playing pretty much by the book or close to by the book. Druids aren't going to get that high. No. Now with fighters, let's go over to these. Wilderness Survival is a Ranger Druid niche. It's why they're in the party. Yes, exactly. And this is why they've got a problem with Rangers in later editions, because the exploration tier of the game has been pretty much made null and void. But yes, Rangers and Druids. That's why one of the reasons I enjoy Module UK1 is because it boosts the Druid. And I like those sort of games where players have to think about their consumables. They have to plan their journeys, where they have to think about what they're carrying with them. And later versions of the game have just sort of drawn a line through all of that and just made it all about being a hero. And I think it should be more than that. And Rangers and Druids are perfect for that role. Too many players wanted to be a drow because of power. Yes. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah. You know what? I'd let people play drow, and then I'd make sure they went to the surface, and then describe in great detail how the villagers capture them and burn them at the stake. Yeah. I'm going to come to Rangers in a bit, because I believe there are changes regarding the Ranger in this book. There are, but I'm not at Rangers yet. So hold your horses. And Omen Owl has actually mentioned the page I've just flicked over to. In the fighters section, it talks about weapon specialization. I used to like this, but I don't think I would allow it anymore. Or I might just allow basic level of specialization, which is +1 to hit, +2 damage, and deny the whole double specialization bit. Because +3 to hit, +3 damage for double specialization is ridiculous, and it is the march towards characters being overpowered. I don't mind a character having +1 to hit, +2 damage at low levels, and I think it can balance out a dexterous character quite nicely. The whole idea that someone is a character that's very dexterous, fencing with a sword and being extra special with his sword, and be able to do more damage because he's more skillful. But it's when they start stacking. We had a dwarf in our last campaign, about level 8, double specialized in hammer, magical hammer, Gauntlets of Ogre Power. I think they were doing plus 11 damage on every hit. Every single hit. Plus 8 to hit. It gets out of hand. It does get out of hand, but single specialization is okay. Bow specialization is yeah. It is quite niche, but it's powerful if you can pull it off. And the whole extra attacks per round in specialization does make things a bit too overpowered. I think I'd remove the extra attacks per round if we were doing this again and limit them to +1 to hit, +2 damage, and that'll be it. No more than that. No more than that. Anyway. I've heard the Cavalier is poopy. It's interesting. As I said, I don't mind them at low levels as long as the player is willing to embrace the drawbacks and role play them properly. And I think they could get out of hand at high levels. And in my opinion, most Cavaliers should be dying before they reach first level, because that is just the pain of becoming Cavalier. They're rare. They should be rare anyway because they require very high stats. I know he's being tongue-in-cheek, but my reply to that is yeah, I know. No, I'm not at the armor bit yet though, but yeah. Yeah. Now, I didn't mention the stat progression. I didn't mention stat progressions of Cavaliers. This is something that people often say, oh, Cavaliers were far too powerful because their stats improved. There's plenty to moan at Cavaliers about. That's not one of them. Do the mathematics. It's 2d10 per level. An average of 10 or 11 points. So they will gain an average of 1 point in strength, dexterity, and constitution. Those are the 3 stats. Every 10 levels of experience. Yeah, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Doesn't happen very often. Yes. Unearthed Arcana was essentially a 1985 hardback book that was a collection of Dragon magazine articles that many had been reworded a little bit, re-edited, and allegedly play tested. And I already mentioned that I don't think it was properly play tested. But yes, a lot of this has come out of Dragon magazine. Of course, when I bought this when I was about 13, 14, I've got no idea what Dragon magazine was. So as far as I'm concerned, it was a shiny new book. Hi, Ernie. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is becoming a regular thing, but as I've said to everyone, there won't be one next week. I'll say to everyone again, I'm going to see Tool next Wednesday. So I'm going to be listening to quality music rather than talking to you lot. All right. Yeah, Omen Al has answered just another captain already. Those of you who've seen my streams will know that Dark Knight plays bad cop as much as possible. He enjoys it. He enjoys it. Yeah, but you get the 2-finger salute again. And yes, Omen Al here talking about Belt of Giant Strength, +5 sword, weapon specialization. You're talking, you might have +13 to hit at this point, +20 damage, and it all gets. That's when they start going killing gods. Which some people apparently have fun doing that. I think we did when we were 13. That's what children do. I'm going to come to that bit here. Yeah, there is something later. It's later on in the book. I might have to do this stream over 2 because we're on page 18 and 19 and it's a 100-odd page book. So I might have to break this up and do this, finish this up in a few weeks' time. See, Lee here says, I use weapon specialization, but not at first level. Yeah, I could see that, and only allow 1 level of weapon specialization, which is the +1, +2, and they can do that when they gain a proficiency, when they've gained a bit of skill in the class at 3rd, 4th level or whatever. Yeah, fine. Yeah, I can get with that. I'm not going to allow double specialization anymore. Yeah, the extra D6 for character creation, that's gonna, in fact, I might jump to that bit very soon after I've done the classes, because that's a key point I want to mention. And practice gets it. All right. Ignore DK. He'll go away eventually. All right. Let's move on to barbarians. Right. That's me dropping my vapor. To excuse me. The original barbarian. Sorry, I'm wobbling on. The original paladin was a sort of class that attracted the control freaks. Because if you picked a paladin, nobody in the party could be evil. Nobody in the party could have an assassin. It was one of those ones where it's my way or the highway. And this continued with the barbarian. I don't think it's mechanically that terrible. It needs masses of experience points to gain up a level. The biggest fault with the barbarian is if somebody chose to be a barbarian, you couldn't have any clerics or magic users in the party at first level. And that is just selfish. I'm sorry, but with that restriction in place, only an absolute dick will pick a barbarian. Someone who just wants to impose their will on the party. Now, if the party is entirely made up of fighters, barbarians, and thieves, fine. I don't want to play that sort of game. Not anymore. I like a mixture in the party, and the barbarian just rules that out. So, yeah, if we're doing a wilderness thing where it's only fighters and thieves, I'd allow a barbarian, otherwise no. I don't think they're mechanically too bad. Rangers. Now, they improved tracking. I prefer the tracking in Unearthed Arcana. In fact, I think they've improved Rangers no end in here, because tracking's got more depth to it. It's got a more defined list of giant class creatures, so it clarifies things, brings in a lot of the new creatures that were coming out in the Fiend Folio and the Monster Manual 2. And Ranger weapons. Rangers have to have a certain selection of weapons when they begin. Their first three weapons must include any 3 of the following: a missile weapon such as a bow or light crossbow, a dagger or a knife, a spear or an axe, and a sword of any type. And their 4th weapon must be the one that they didn't pick when they had 3. That's fine. That balances out all those extra hit points they get at first level, and the fact that they can do the tracking and all that, and the hitting harder against humanoids. I like that. I think they did exactly the right thing with Rangers here. Yep, that is the sort of Ranger I want to use. It does clarify attacks per melee round. That's fine. And the next thing on page 22 is another thing I do like, which is the effect of armor on thief functions. It gives more flexibility to the thief. It allows a thief to wear different armor types, but at a cost to their thieving abilities. Yes, it makes the idea of an elven fighter thief in a suit of elven chain. Yes, you can still do the thieving things. You can fight well. But there is a penalty. You got like minus 20% to your climbing walls, minus 20% to your pickpockets. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's good. Page 23. Did anybody ever play a Thief Acrobat? There he is. I think that's possibly that and page 24 are 2 pages and 25 that have never seen any use in any game of AD&D I've ever played. I don't know anybody who's ever played a Thief Acrobat. Pointless. Waste. Oh, Omen Owl has. You've got to be different, haven't you? You've got to be different. I've never seen anyone play one. I really haven't. So I don't know how they work in a game because people just haven't used them. Right, we're at the end of classes. So let's have a look. Half tempted to play a dwarven fighter who worships Thor, I guess, and wants the ogre gauntlets, giant belt. Yeah, I mean, doesn't all dwarfs want ogre gauntlets, giant belt, and giant hammer because they want to kill giants? That's what dwarves do. Because these clan hunts, yeah, that's what dwarves do. That's from the whole Norse idea of the dwarf. And good luck. Good luck in getting them because you'll be playing a long time before you do. Yeah, but if you're playing in a normal, in a campaign where you're playing regular adventures, experienced players will know that roughly half of magic weapons are swords. It's just the way thing is. So you hedge your bets, and you specialize in a type of sword. That's what the power gamers do. I need to say, Geek, I'll never go away. Oh, serious about the dwarf thing? Yeah, well, yeah. There's nothing wrong with a dwarf wanting to bash giants. That's what dwarfs are supposed to do. They've got a mechanical advantage against giants as well, because giants get a -4 to hit them. Well, bonus 4 to their dwarf gets a bonus of 4 to their AC against giants. Yes, a dwarf who wants to march into G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King, and go up against all the fire giants in there, it's more than welcome to try. Just watch out for this drow in there. Druids were a cleric subclass. Specifically, barbarians of level 1 couldn't have anything to do with magic. At level 2, they could associate with clerics. Bear in mind, though, that to reach level 2, a barbarian needs 6,000 experience points, which is effectively level 3 for most other classes. So they've already denied a lot of low-level magic users and clerics from joining the party. At level 3, they can use magic potions. At level 4, they can use magic weapons and may strike creatures only hit by +1 weapons. It's not until they get to level 6 that they can associate with magic users if necessary. Level 6 for a barbarian is 80,000 experience points. Do the maths, work out exactly how long that is preventing your mate from playing a magic user. It's a long time. One thing I do like about Cavaliers is having that class limit, having to be upper class, lower class, middle class. I like that sort of thing in the game, and having them start with limited stuff just makes life more difficult. Right, I am going to jump here a little bit to the Dungeon Masters bit, and something I want to have a bit of a shout at. Right, the first bit of the Dungeon Masters section, page 74, so I've jumped forward there, introduces method 5 for creating characters. Yes, it's only designed for creation of humans. non-humans are meant to do the 4d6 rearrange. That's the general way of doing it. But if you think about it, things like the paladin, which need ridiculous stats, have to be human. Barbarians have to be human. Monks need high stats. They have to be human. So you're basically you are encouraging human play, but you are... I'll start this again. Right. This method can only be used to create human player characters. It gives the player an opportunity to generate a character of the desired class. Do we see the shift already? Subject to the DM's approval. Yeah, I'd be strong about it nowadays, but at the age of 13 or 14, no. And be assured the ability scores for the character will meet the minimum requirements for the class in question. Basically, what this did is it told you how many dice to roll for the stats when creating classes, creating specific classes. For example, to create a cavalier, you rolled 8d6 for strength and kept the 3 highest. And even then, if you didn't get the required amount, which was 15, you boosted it to 15. So this was basically saying players can be whatever they want to be, opening up all the classes to all the players. I firmly believe that the vast majority of player characters should be fighter, cleric, thief, magic user. That is a key facet of first edition AD&D for me, and that all other classes should be comparatively rare, depending on how easy they are to qualify for. And this table was one of the worst things to ever appear in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. I've said it. Method 5 can go and take a jump. Never use. I will never ever use. Yeah, I allowed it when I was 13 or 14. I will never ever use it now. It's not happening. Don't even ask. So DK, when you're creating a character for a Saturday game, don't talk about method 5. I'll mute you. Anyway, let's move on. Where have we got to? Specialization should already be well represented by the to-hit tables. There is a point here in that fighters get better to-hit tables, and they increase their ability to hit a lot faster, and they attack against little weak creatures. They attack much more quickly. So, yeah, I can be on board with this. The idea that fighters are already better at fighting, and that is specialization. Yeah, that's absolutely right. We've found the one person who played a thief acrobat. Now find somebody else. To go hand in hand with the D&D the D&D cartoon gave us the thief acrobat and the cavalier, and I don't know what came first. This is a chicken and egg situation. I don't know whether they appeared together. Was one advertising the other, or was one supporting the other? I know we got the cartoon about the same time as Unearthed Arcana here in the UK. Did it come out at all earlier in America? I don't know. I haven't looked into that. I remember the cartoon. I did enjoy it when I was a kid. I've not looked back at it. A thief acrobat can also do jumping and balancing and that sort of thing, because those mechanics weren't in D&D. The DM was meant to make all those up as he went along. Okay, the evasion was nice for the thief acrobat. Well, okay, but did you play one, Praxis? Did you play one? Let's see if Omanal knows about that. There was certainly something about barbarians breaking magic weapons, breaking magic items. Yeah, they like to trash magic items. Yeah, I would. A barbarian, yeah. Bonus XP for killing the mage. Eric says the Thief Acrobat was simply added because of the cartoon. I'm guessing it must have been from Dragon Magazine then. And, yeah, it was all from Dragon Magazine. And then because of the cartoon, they put it in. So saying the cartoon came first. "3d6 6 times per stat and taking the highest." Yeah, you get a character with a lot of 12s and 13s and 14s, and you get the occasional decent stat, but not very many low ones. And the reason I don't like that method is I do like to have weaknesses, and I like to try and bring those weaknesses into my character. I like to physically try and represent a weakness in the role playing. I'm playing in a West Marches basic fantasy game at the moment, and my first character in that, who died, had a 4 dexterity. Contributed towards his death. It's supposed to. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. My next character has got an 8 constitution. That's a minus, and he's a magic user, so he gets 1d4 minus 1 hit points at first level. 3d6 straight down the line, and a fairly rolled 18 intelligence. Like that's useful in basic D&D, except it isn't. A few extra languages, woohoo! That is the point. That is, yeah. If you give them a method that just hands out the stats, there we go. It's just, it's a ridiculous method. It is absolutely ridiculous. Well, I'm already giving DK far too much airtime here. We had that in the form of the Bard, didn't we? The Bard was the first prestige class. And yeah, I don't mind that sort of thing. And I would have to think. But I think the ethos of a druid's very different to a cleric. Maybe a cavalier, a really good cavalier becoming a paladin might be interesting. A really good fighter becoming a paladin might be interesting. Maybe might be a better way of doing it. You got paladins and rangers getting spells at higher levels, and that could be sort of simulated as being like a prestige class. Possibly. I never played with the prestige classes. I didn't play 3rd edition. Okay. I'm jumping ahead here. Hello, Aaron. You're all right. That was 5 minutes ago. AD&D is a team sport. Yes. 5th edition is a group of individuals. It can be. I try to force my 5e group to play as a team. They had to on Monday. That's because they were trying to get out of a boat onto slippery steps while being with piranhas in the water and 4 whites on the steps. So yeah, they had to work as a team to get out of there. Yeah, but you've got to be nasty to make them do that. So we're still on 1. We're still on 1 Thief Acrobat. It's still only Omen Owl. Praxis didn't play one. Captain gets it. The ideal party size in AD&D was around 6 characters, in my opinion. 2 fighting types, maybe 1 or 2 multi-classed, 1 magic user, 1 cleric, 1 thief. There we go. That's about it. You get your balance that way. It doesn't matter what multi-class is, then it just backs up one of the other pillars. But as long as you've got your magic user, your cleric, your thief, a couple of fighters, the other one being a multi-class, maybe a fighter thief, maybe a fighter mage, maybe a fighter cleric, maybe a cleric mage, whatever. You've got that balance then. You've got that nice balance. Each niche is covered. That's exactly how it should be. And that's how it should go back to being. Stats 6 plus 2d6. Am I talking to a bunch of power gamers here? Do none of you want to play with a 4 dexterity or a 5 wisdom or a 3 charisma or something like that? Look for the fun in having bad stats. There's plenty to be had. One of my favorite characters was a fighter I rolled for a 2nd edition game. His highest stat was 15. I put that on dexterity. He had a few 11s and 12s. And he had about 6 or 7. 6 intelligence, 7 wisdom, or 7 intelligence, 6 wisdom. I can't remember which way around I put it. When he met the party, he was trying to read a map. He got upside down. He was lamenting the fact that he had poisoned his best friend, his dog, because he had accidentally picked mushrooms that are poisonous. And he told the party that he was the best cook of mushroom stew in the land, and he promptly poisoned half the party members. Yeah, it was great fun. It's great fun to play stupid characters, but he was so nice about it. He was a good guy. He was so helpful, and he was so stupid. He was so wonderful. I remember when we were in a town. There was a necromancer in the town, and necromancer was raising bodies from the graveyard, and the villagers were up in arms because their recently buried dead were walking back into town to kill them all as zombies. So we re-killed all the zombies, and my character went and lectured the villagers to make sure they said, look, the reason why they were attacking you is because they were annoyed that you buried them when they were alive. So we've gone and killed them all again for you. Done you a good deed. He meant well. He meant well. Anyway. Yeah, 1 free mulligan. Fine. Well, that's what you did for our DCC game. Yeah, 3d6 in order, 1 free. I like 4d6 rearrange. You've got that chance of getting something absolutely appalling in there, which is fun. It is fun. There's 1 person converted. I've seen people defend method 5 to the hilt, and if you do that, then no, you lose my respect. Method 5 is just crap. It is crap. It's crap. I know you're not a power gamer, DK. Omanal, do you want to join in for the stream? If you want to join in for the stream, you need Discord. There's a link underneath the stream. If you join the Discord channel, there is a link in there which will bring you into the lobby of StreamYard, and then I will just let you in and you can chat away and you can say hello to people. That's how you do it, but you do need to go into the Discord server to get it, but there is a stream invite thing in there. So that's Omanal wanted to join in. John Schwartz, low mental stats are fun, but low physical stats just mean you may as well throw your life away. It depends. It depends on how you want to play it, in my opinion, and it depends on the balance of combat in the game. Yeah, my dexterity 4 cleric died very quickly, but it's partly because I ran into combat and tried to take on some goblins, and one of them immediately did maximum damage against me, and he would have, if I hadn't had a 2-point penalty to my dexterity, he would have still hit me. It would have still killed me because I'd got rubbish armor. Anyway, Omanal is in the lobby, which means in order to be able to hear him, I need to put these on. So I think it's time to say hello to Omanal. Hello, Omanal.
Hello. Seeing that I'm now, to be fair, I don't have the books with me, and I last remember playing this 30 years. So I'm going off all this and purely from memory. So you're gonna have to forgive me for some of these things, but I still remember those specializations and everything. And now as I don't want to say purely reformed power gamer, but as a somewhat reformed rules lawyer, power gamer, GM, I'm like, no, that's not allowed.
Good. I mean, yeah. I remember power gaming horribly when I was in my teens. I was the forever DM, and all my players power gamed back then because they didn't know any better. And it's something I think it comes with experience, and I think most power gamers, as we grow up as gamers, I think we sort of realize that there's much more to it than power gaming.
There's that. I think the other issue too, and I'm going to mention this. I know it's a little bit different, but I remember playing a Dark Sun game where I decided to play quote an average character. No, average meant I had no stat above 15 and no negatives, but everyone else had in their 20s. When you have players that have much higher stats and those with low stats, especially at low level, it so outclasses them that you just twiddling your thumbs like, what can I do? And I think that's a problem with any of these, like you're talking about these prestige classes. I still feel in many ways, in retrospect, is I really wish they had, and this is why I like basics so much. You get your 4 classes, you want to be a cavalier, all right, now you got to, once you hit a certain level, I'll let you do that. And I guess maybe dual class would be the way to do it nowadays, within reason, and say, okay.
Because that came in later in the Beck-Me sort of procession, didn't it? I mean, I had the Mensa basic set. I had the Moldvay Cook expert set. I stopped there. I didn't get the further ones. So for me, I think back to basic, and I just think to the 7 classes and none of that, none of those prestige editions. But I'm aware they were added later in the history. I can see you in there, DK. Just hold on a moment.
And to be fair, I was exactly the same way that you were. As I stopped at expert, and then I'm like, well, I want to be all these cool things, and so I want to go over this way. And Drugar, Sverneblin, and Drow, because they got all those extra abilities, just got overweighted up to the point that all of a sudden all these, like half the party was Drow or Drugar, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Halakar says a power game is a fun one-off, just like a terribly underpowered game, but doing either all the time will get terribly boring. I just like the fairness of 4d6 rearranged. Take what you get. You get a mixed bag. A lot of characters will die, and quite often what happens is the one you get lulled into a false sense of security. If you've got a really powerful character, you think you're tougher than you are, and you'll get killed and end up with a weaker character. I don't mind if you've got 2 or 3 characters in a group and you're playing a module, for example, that's designed for 6 characters. Then, I'm gonna try and make sure you're a little bit more powerful, at least able to cope with it. But no, as a one-off, it's a one-off. Munchy Gecko says hello. David Leonard's entered the room. Ernie Noah. Still got some, well, players with imperfect characters have more fun and are more entertaining.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. I'm going to bring in DK now. So just, if you've not encountered DK before, he's always got a lot to say.
Well, that's good.
Hi.
Hello, DK. Hello.
Hi.
Now, what have you got to add, seeing as you've never played first edition AD&D and you've never read Unearthed Arcana?
I am going to sit in the corner and skulk.
Okay. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine.
But if I have something stupid to say, you will know.
Yeah. I'm going to turn the page now and go to the next bit of Unearthed Arcana. I've gone back from those stupid character method 5 character rolling bit. I've come back now to a page in Unearthed Arcana which added a load of new armor and weapons. Now, AD&D was already known for having a wide variety of weapons. So what they did here is they just added loads and loads and loads of niche ones, in my opinion. It brought in your falchion, it brought in your khopesh, it brought in what else have we got here? The atlatl, which is all right. Do you know what an atlas is? Anybody?
It's a map, I would imagine.
No, you think of an atlas. An atlas is a club on a string, on a piece of rope that you throw and pull back. It got the garrote. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But the key thing on this page is it added field plate armor and full plate armor, which had damage absorption capabilities. And this is what makes Cavaliers, once they get to level 5 or 6, and I've got the money to buy these, such ridiculous tanks. Full plate armor gives you a base AC of 1, and I believe it absorbs 2 hit points per dice.
Is it 2 hit points per dice or 2 hit points per attack?
I thought it was 2 hit points. I'm just looking now. I am just looking. It might be 2 hit points per hit, but still, yes, it falls apart after a while. But if you've got a Cavalier that's already getting major dice for hit points, has to have a Constitution bonus, has an AC of at worst -1, full plate armor, shield, have to have a dexterity of 15 or better, and they're absorbing damage with every single hit as well. That's why they become ridiculous at level 6 and above.
Well, and for level 6, they're expected to generally have +2 armor and a +2 sword or so. That's going to be pretty standard looking at the module.
Yeah. But I mean, +2 full plate, I'd say no. Yeah. A Cavalier by this point will a full plate costs a ridiculous amount. So the idea is that the Cavalier will be putting away money for its status, the status symbol of having a full plate. But if you've managed to get hold of a suit of full plate +1 by this point, that's a very generous DM. Because one of the ideas was that a Cavalier would prefer to wear full plate that's non-magical ahead of a suit of plate mail +5, because the full plate is a status symbol. Anyway, enough about Cavaliers.
Well, yeah. Well, then you combine that with the Paladin, and then you combine that, which they'll have their magic shield, and then once you get to like 10th level, you can start looking at your Holy Avenger. Oh yeah,
it gets insane, doesn't it? It gets insane,
and it doesn't make the game that much more fun. Is the sad thing.
It doesn't.
In retrospect, and to be fair, I did this once, and this is where I became anti-power gamer. Is I once let the players, I gave out too much gold, and they hit 40th level in a few months because we played almost every day. And I said, no, never again. So everything was low magic and pretty gritty after that whenever I played.
Yeah. That's the best way to keep it. Where was I? I was looking somewhere. And I can't remember what. What I was going to say was when I ran against the Giants, our Cavalier challenged the chief of the Hill Giant tribe to a duel and killed him in about 3 rounds.
They get 3 attacks at that level?
About 3 rounds.
No, but I mean they get 3 attacks per round, don't they? With that didn't they get the specialization? I can't remember if that was only fighter or if they allowed that with the Cavalier.
He wasn't a specialist, but he was. I know he was attacking multiple times. But he basically killed him in about 5 hits. He was hitting that hard. I think he'd got something like he got magically boosted strength, which took him up to about 19. because
that was +7 damage, and then
I think he got a longsword +2 or +3, and he gets a bonus with a chosen weapon as well to hit and damage.
So
it might have been 3. But
well, it only had what 9 or 10 hit dice. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean and he's not going to miss with any attack against the AC, and he's doing D12s plus 10 to 12 on every hit. It's absolute carnage. But then that group went into G3 and a bit later and got battered. So even having the ultimate tank didn't help them. We then got a load of moving through Unearthed Arcana. The new spells are absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. More spells is almost always good. Most of them are really good. Most of them are more flavorful. But one thing it did add was cantrips. This was the first book to include cantrips. I'd be interested to know if anybody who used Unearthed Arcana, whether they're magic users from first edition, used cantrips, because they took up a first level spell slot.
They did at higher levels. I mean, with the except, I remember players taking like one. Yeah, but you got like 4 cantrips per first level spell. So by the time you were at higher level, you might take a cantrip, 1 or 2 cantrips, just for that very reason. Because otherwise, you're just kind of wait. Especially, well, I can do magic missile, which I got fireball and lightning bolt. So, I mean, it's
now. I believe that 5th edition has certainly taken cantrips far too far by making them spammable and damage causing. But I would like to see somewhere in between AD&D.
Second edition did a good job with cantrips, didn't they? Because they put those as an addition to your first level spells. That's
the sort of balance it needs.
Yeah.
Because they're flavorful little additions, and I would have no problem if an AD&D magic user would have maybe 3 cantrips that they could use a day, because these are things like clean, curdle, belch, things like that. They're just...
And those cantrips they used in first and second edition were really just meant to be sort of like, you could light a little candle or something. Yeah. They were not. 5th edition is, I have my issues with 5th edition just because you're now doing your ranger, because you have longer range, you're doing more damage or unlimited attacks from the spells. But in first edition, cantrips really made a lot of sense. It was like you're not always fighting. You don't have to memorize magic missile all the time. If you're in town, you'd rather have clean than have magic missile on you all the time.
I mean, I wouldn't mind having them as an addition. So, for example, a first level magic user has 1 first level spell and can learn an additional couple of cantrips, because they are so minor. They're so gentle. I wouldn't mind that. I don't think it would add to the power of the magic user in any real degree, because wilt, for example, or warm, cough, giggle, nod. Those sort of things. They are just, they're there for flavour, and anything that adds that little bit of flavour is fine. And as you're saying, around town, yeah. If your party are in a tavern and you make somebody belch, it can be quite amusing. Anywho, there were a lot of spells in the book. The spells go on for about 40 pages. So we go to the Dungeon Masters section.
Didn't they also have, was 0 level characters in this one, or was it a different one? Or was it in the Greyhawk one? I can't remember.
There was the 0 level Cavalier.
Okay.
But I believe it was the Greyhawk book that added 0 level characters properly. But did that come after N4 Treasure Hunt introduced the idea of the 0 level character?
I don't remember. I just remember getting the hardbacks. I remember Greyhawk came out along with Dragonlance. I think Dragonlance did a better job for the Cavaliers, but I couldn't remember about this one. But I do remember like a 0 level Cavalier. But
they had the Knights of Solamnis. Okay, I'm gonna go looking at some of the. I'll say hello to Blaine. Blaine's popped in. David. Everyone rolled characters with just about all attributes above 14. Total party killing the ghost. Ghost Tower Inverness. Yeah, well, yeah. It especially if you play the campaign version of it. It's a party wipe in the making.
Everyone had 218, 116, and then a couple of like 12s.
I've heard of DMs handing them out like confetti.
I remember being guilty of this when I was younger, and as I got older, I said, you know what? It's a little bit more fun. Not necessarily to have the 3s and the 5s. I understand not liking those, but to at least have a negative here or a positive there. But nothing at the scale that's up there. But then again, most players do want to play a magic user or a cleric, because that's a big difference for those wisdom to get all those extra spells, and then for a magic user to get those higher level spells, you had to have a certain intelligence as well. So
I didn't mind so much of the magic user because you had to be playing for a long time to get to the levels, and of course you had to be human to get to the levels where you're casting those high level spells. And I liked the idea that they were the domain of old magic users whose intelligence had gone up through age.
Yeah.
I'd be quite happy starting with a 15, 16 intelligence and gaining intelligence through age and becoming middle-aged and old. And by the time they're old, that's when they've got the high-level spells.
Oh, I forgot that. That was the other thing we used to do, upper stats. I'll be, what is it? Not a youth, but the one that's right above it.
Yes.
Oh, I get +1 to con, I get +1 to strength. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah. We did all of that. Yeah, I know. When we was kids, I don't mind it. I don't mind that bit. But that's because I use the 4d6 rearrange strictly. And in my experience, the vast majority of characters with that method will get 1 or 2 stats of around 15 or 16.
Yeah.
That's get a few that are slightly better and a few that are slightly worse, but the vast majority will have a 15 or 16 or maybe a second 15. That's about how they tend to turn out. And if you give them a plus, if you allow them to be that age bracket when they get +1 strength and +1 con, that's absolutely fine because they're not going to be massively overpowered.
Yeah, like you said, a little +1 dexterity, +1 con, +1 strength really doesn't alter things. But the 18/00, that especially at first or second level, that vastly skewed because it made everything easier to hit and everything died in 1 hit, so you didn't have the same desperation level.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I particularly dislike this method 5, because it's handing out high stats just willy nilly, and when you're at that level, then having the bonuses through aging, and if you do find a manual or something that gives you a +1, it suddenly has so much more impact when you're starting from a higher position. Yep, the K5K do recall a ridiculously overpowered cavalier in a party of my youth. Yeah, it's a comment. That bit at the start about everything being play tested. That's why I don't believe that was the case, because if you add in the fact that Cavalier is going to have a dexterity bonus, is going to have a constitution bonus, they have to seek out the best possible armor. They've got the best possible armor, gives them damage absorption. They're immune to fear. They get basically free weapon specialization of a sort because they have chosen weapons. They're almost always going to have a damage bonus from their strength. When they start, they're bearable, but by the time they're to level 6 and 7 and can afford that armor, they're just insane. They are insane.
Is the method 5, because I don't have UA. That's the you get to choose 2 15s, correct?
No. I'll let you here. It you know how you roll 4d6 and rearrange for mostly in AD&D.
Yeah.
What you do with this one? Let's say, for example, you've picked a monk. A monk has to have a 15 strength.
Right.
Number of dice rolled for strength for a monk, 7. You roll 7d6. If and keep the 3 highest. If you don't get a 15, you up your stat to 15.
That's insane.
And it's so a monk gets 7 dice for strength, 5 for intelligence, 9 for wisdom, 8 for dexterity, 6 for constitution, 4 for charisma, and 3 for comeliness. Drop the comeliness, but so there's no rearranging, but you just boost to the minimum, and they don't need charisma. They're still getting 4 dice. Drop 1 for charisma. They don't need it, and it's so even the poor stats are likely to be above average.
But
fighters.
The reason why I go for it.
I said fighters get 9 dice for strength. 3 keep the 3 highest.
What?
7 dice for dexterity. 8 for constitution. Keep the 3 highest. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And I think some of what they did when they said they play tested it, I think the problem is that they play tested it with their group and not with a bunch of young kids who are running around going, "I'm going to max everything out."
I feel they might have over-egged their playtesting, personally.
Yeah, well,
really,
I mean, I looked at, I remember watching one stream where they was reading out the rules, one through, from chainmail, and then the beginning white box and things like that. And you realize that there's a lot of design that was brought forward, but the mentality that came with that design, so people understood it, did not come forward with it as well. And I think that's a big factor. Well, it's just like the Dungeon Master's Guide. Very few people actually have read the entire thing. I don't think I've read the entire thing. And I read, all the cool stuff I wanted in there, which were all optional rules. And, in retrospect, I went, oh, that's the way it was meant to be played. But most people didn't read the entire thing that way.
I certainly didn't at the time. I've probably read the entire thing now, but I've never read it in order. I've just read a couple of pages here and there, and another couple of pages. There might be the odd page I've never read, but never read fully. But
my reason for asking about the 215s is just for Aaron's game. I think it was murmured that people said that Gygax allowed you to assign 215s to a stat if you rolled too low, and I was just confused as to
in the Dungeon Master's Guide. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, it recommends characters start with 215s.
Okay,
it's a recommendation. It's basically whatever. So that predates Unearthed Arcana by 6 years, and it's in the section where it's referring to the other stat generation methods that are offered in there. It does recommend having 215s. I've never followed that recommendation.
Honestly, yeah, because as nice, even I'm half thinking, I'd like 215s. At the end of the day, I'm like, no, I gotta fight the urge, to be honest. Because then at the end of the day, if you just assign stats, there's no point in rolling it. It's like the point buy system that came about like 3rd edition and is prevalent today. I have never. I started 5e when I started we rolled our stats. Now we did something insane where we did 66, drop the lowest 3, and assign as we wish. Yeah.
Yep.
I came up with a rule that you can start with an automatic 20 of your choice, but I get to assign a 7 of my choice before you do. So
see, my ideal character will have roughly 215s, but will also have a 6 or a 7 in there.
Yeah. That's why I chose the 7. That's why I chose the 7, because it would basically, and you didn't get to choose the 7, I did. So I gave you one really good stat, but I gave you a pretty abysmal one by 5e standards. Because a -2 is pretty rough. And I was merciful, and I was like, if they said, oh, I'm going to play a bard, I'm not going to put the 7 into charisma. I'm not going to gimp your class. I'm not cruel,
Well, and I don't think you went over the other sub, and I can't remember if they had it in this one or a different book, with all the different subclasses of elves that gave them additional bonuses on top of being the elf, like the gray elf and the. I'm sorry, I can just see your face right now.
Yeah, it's like it all loops back to when you give demi-humans such amazing powers. What is the point in playing a human?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I explained at the start of the stream that I quite like one of the reasons why I like the level limits is it pushes those who think in a power gaming way towards playing humans, which then strips them of all the demi-human cool powers, because those players will be looking and thinking my character's going to get to level 20 or whatever, but in reality we know they're not. It guides people towards playing humans.
Yeah, no, I think I'm not against level restrictions. I think they're good.
Like I said, now looking at it, and I did back the old school essentials books, but I did like.
Right.
I like class and race. You know, if you're a human, you can have multiple classes, and I do like the fact that if you're a race, you were a dwarf, and I think that limited a lot of the power gaming aspect. Because I remember when you started playing Drow, everyone wanted to be a female Drow. Oh, I want to be a cleric, fighter, magic user, cleric. I'm always underground because I get these +1 weapons and the fairy fire and darkness and dancing lights or whatever. I can't remember all the spells I got. And
5e. Yeah.
No, this is 1A. This is 1E.
Oh shit.
Yes. This is why everyone wanted to play Drow back there. And the same thing with Druger. They got I think they got Enlarge. They got all these other different abilities. And you look at it and you go, and to be fair, and I did this too, no one really enforced the negatives for these things, both mechanically and the social aspect, which is like what was like you were describing, where it was saying, oh, you're gonna be a Drow, you're gonna be killed on sight. That's the way it came out. I mean, you were worse than an orc, and elves really wanted you dead.
But yeah, it might be fun allowing Drow elves in my next game. It's just because I'll just spend a while on Wikipedia reading about interesting medieval torture and execution techniques, because they will feature in the game.
like I look at Drow the way Lion and Dragon looks at elves in general, as these alien horrific monstrosities that worship demons, that will steal your children and replace them with changelings, that just looking at them will mesmerize you and dominate you. And they absolutely, unequivocally want everyone that isn't them dead.
DK,
or enslaved. Or enslaved.
I would recommend you read the original Vault of the Drow, module D3. I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, probably, I'll have to check it out. Yeah, it's on my list.
Oh yeah, the Vault of the Drow was really, but that brought them first out. I remember buying Fiend Folio and then getting Vault of the Drow. It took forever to find because I was in Germany, so I had to go around the different military bases as a little kid. Like, and we found it! Yay! It was people don't understand. It was never one military base. You had to go like 6 or 7 to find anything, and it's wherever your parents drug you to. But yeah, there's a lot of those things that came into it, and then. In high school, I remember everyone wanted to play Druger or Drow, whatever was the most powerful, and it really skewed things in many ways. If I'm going to play an elf, especially with these class level limitations that could be broken as you get higher level, I'm going to play a gray elf because they get a +1 to intelligence on top of the +1 to dexterity, and they didn't balance it out, and I don't.
No.
And I don't mind so much having point buy systems because it prevents one character from being so much better than another, but I also now appreciate the randomness. So it depends on what players want. But biggest problem for me with point buy systems is it's caused a belief that 8 is a low stat, because they all seem to start from 8. And now I see players saying, I've got 8 intelligence, it means I can't read. Oh, no. See, and I'm growing up with the old first edition where it was like 3, and 5. And so to me, in 8, it's like, oh, you only have a -1. What are you complaining about? That's
I'd be fine with some form of stat, some sort of flexible stat system whereby you rolled a handful of dice and you added them to a base number. That would give the variety. But I would also say there's a maximum number of dice you can add to any one stat.
Well, and even for 5e, I used to put a barbarian as an 8. The problem I had is when I was playing one time a barbarian, I inherited the character to play, and he had an intelligence of 3, and I said, look, this is just, he's too dumb to actually do anything. And I wouldn't mind
he's
at a 6. There needs to be a reasonable range in there. And I think I asked the DM if I could switch him up and make him a dwarf and raise some stats and lower other stats. He was fine with it. But yeah, it was, those were the problems I had, is you had either the 18 strength and the 3 intelligence, and that's what people would do. And I'm going, look, I don't mind a 6 or a 7 where you get a -1 or a -2, which to me was reasonable. But yeah, to me that those there was too much in there and saying, well, you just wouldn't have survived if you had a constitution of 3. You just wouldn't have. I mean,
no.
And I think there should be a lower level limit for that. Saying, okay, until your character starts getting drained or other things, like you got resurrected too many times and you watch your constitution drop by 1 every time, that I understand. But
yeah, my contention with point buy systems for this is it makes characters boring.
It does,
because everyone like, I'm gonna be a rogue with 16 dexterity, maybe 16 constitution or charisma. Like, they'll put them in stats that are optimal, for playing a rogue. And it's I would honestly, I would like, if we're gonna do the whole, like, say, build thing, I'd like to build a half orc rogue with, say, strength, because how sneak attack works in 5e is you just need a finesse weapon to do their sneak attack thing, not that you need dexterity. You just need a finesse weapon. There is a difference. So I have no problem doing it more interestingly, but even then I don't even have to do that. I just say I'm just a strong thief. That's it.
You know what I would do as I'm getting older is I would just start the characters like they did for the 0 level, which I know is in Greyhawk, where you start with really low stats and you have to slowly buy your way up. And that way, everyone could get the same. I'll give you an example. I was planning doing a 5e Kobold campaign where everyone was going to start off at 8. They got no extra, and the 6 strength. Everyone started at that. And then every level they gained, they would add like 2 to stats. So by the time they were 10th, they would be normal, like to an equivalent character. And the idea was that they had to really think. That's the thing they really like having lower stats, is the players have to think of everything rather than, can I rush in and fight? And that's I think that's a big factor into it. Is I want them to think, and by the time that then they mature up into the high level stats, because they already know how to do everything tactically. But yeah, first level character, 18,000, 18 dexterity. Yeah. And I've got plate armor and a shield. Yeah, they're never hitting me.
Basically.
Anyway,
go for it.
Hold on. Point. I'm doing the Saxious thing here and dragging us back onto topic, because point buy. Unearthed Arcana does have a number of sins, but point buy isn't one of them.
Yes.
Well, that's very. Yeah, that's fine.
I just want to say, Praxis here has confirmed that field plate. There's field plate and there's full plate, and it is per. I'm English, so it's per dice. I don't do the die thing. The armor will absorb 1 point of damage for field plate and per dice rolled, and full plate is 2 points per dice. So that's a confirmation. Captain mentions liking the new weapons and armor. Now, yes, I can see that new weapons and armor do add flavor, and what they do as well is they add in, for example, bronze plate mail, which I feel is a nod towards older settings, and with the addition of weapons like the Kopesh, for example, it's basically saying you don't have to play medieval. You can go a bit earlier, and that's fine. I don't mind that. Don't mind that. The Atlatl was an older weapon as well. Andy Sykes mentions there's 2 pages of errata for Unearthed Arcana. Sadly, we didn't have the internet in 1985, and I didn't have Dragon magazine, so I am aware of those errata now. Cantrips, they were a nice change. So went back to using regular spells. Yeah, if I was doing it now, I think I would change it so that the mages can have some cantrips for free in their spell book, but they are very much low powered, flavorful. People say chatting about cantrips. Good cantrips for cooking to improve the disposition of hirelings. But that's nice. That's the sort of play I want to see. So I want to encourage that.
And that's one thing I missed from first edition is the reaction rolls, which made charisma a lot more important.
Yeah.
And they got rid of it in second edition. And I felt that admittedly, I never played with them in 1E back in the day, but in retrospect, that made a real difference. And I really
second edition had reaction rolls.
Did they? I can't remember. It's been a long time.
They switched it to a 2d10 system.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure they did. David confirms that 0 level was in Greyhawk Adventures. I'd like to know if it was in there. Greyhawk Adventures is a book I've never owned. I did have a copy of Treasure Hunt, the module which started at level 0. I'd like to see how similar they are.
If I remember correctly, you started with 90. Every character started off with the stats of 3. You had 90 in there. You had 90 to spend, and then you rolled like a d20, which gave you additional points. And you could get some really weird characters for first level because you could learn just about any class ability. You could add hit points. You could add, so like if you want to increase your permanent hit points, you added 1 to that. With those points, you could get really high stats. It could be unbalanced depending on how long you did, but it allowed your characters to sort of go into being more well-rounded. It was a nice idea. I think that it could be abused very easily, like all things.
That's very different to Treasure Hunt, then. Very, very different the way they did it in Treasure Hunt. I am flicking through these. Yeah, iron stones have always been popular, especially for stats. Some classes had to be overly powerful to exist.
I get it. You could argue that you don't need. You could just play some class archetypes with the 4 core. You know.
Yeah, I mean the problem. The problem is I think the balancing methods didn't work very well because people ignored the role play drawbacks too often.
I think the other problem is that if they're in a book, too many players think that they have to be included and get mad and pop off if they're not. And once you get more mature,
rules as written can go fuck itself.
So very much. I think we are all pretty much of agreement that Method 5 generating ability scores, it can go.
It's the greatest ever.
It's the worst ever, and it led to serious stat inflation. I don't mind the idea of having at least 2 15s, but that went way beyond, way beyond.
Yeah, it went from a recommendation to mandatory, essentially, which is a shame. Yeah.
So what is now it's been a year since I've looked at it. After the spells, you were talking about the DM section for Unearthed.
Yes. The first bit in the DM section is about the stats, and then it does go to a bit of detail about the Cavalier's retainers, which I like. Cavalier getting followers and men-at-arms that they've got to look after. That's a nice feature. I always like characters to have retainers and men-at-arms. very few players ever do that. Now we've got the details about armor class, and weapons, and this does confirm the damage dice absorption.
It really makes the broadsword pretty ineffective with that 2d4 to attack. If you have that full plate, and I think that's part of the issues. That's why everyone picked either longsword or two-handed sword or some of these variations.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there are the two. That was the Morning Star as well. I think Morning Star did. Or was that against
D8?
large creatures?
I think it did D8 and
not in AD&D. It didn't.
Was
Not in
that?
AD&D. It didn't. No.
Huh.
Morning Star. It did 2d4 against small and medium creatures.
Huh? Really? I didn't expect it to do 2d4.
You've got the Rancer, you've got staff slings, Kopeshes, all of which made pretty useless by that rule.
Yeah.
Then we get a bit of detail about war horses and bardings. That's to back up cavaliers, clearly, but because there wasn't enough about it originally. And then descriptions of the new weapon types. And yes, they are flavorful. Yes, they're very much niche weapons, but they are flavorful. Give you an idea what it introduced. Full list here is the Atlas, the Atlatl, the blowgun, caltrops, hand crossbows, which I've always disliked, the garrote harpoons, quite like them, the hook foreshard, which is a short hooking polearm, lassos. I've seen lassos used effectively.
Now, did they use man catcher? I don't.
The man catcher. Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's there. Yep. Yep, the man catcher is there, and that's all right. That's not too big. It's very minor damage. It's just a chance of pulling people off their feet, which is fine. The sap, spiked bucklers, never minded those. The staff sling was always a bit of a weird weapon, sort of like a small artillery weapon. Then it had the falchion, the kopesh, and the whip, which is no one ever should use a whip.
It's all about Indiana Jones. Remember, that was the big thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you like the whip too much, out of curiosity?
Because it's a medieval game.
Well, I mean, the flail is on that list.
Yeah, and I've been known to remove flails from the game for that reason.
Based geek, based.
Well, no, the footman's flail is a real weapon, but it's a two-handed weapon and used. It's a threshing implement. The horseman's flail, we don't know if it existed. The Morning Star, the Morning Star style flail that everyone uses, unlikely it ever existed, and the demos that we have are post-Renaissance at best. Yes.
They're post-Renaissance reconstructions. They didn't exist.
What people don't get right as well is the Morning Star was a real weapon, but it was like fixed on a pole. It wasn't there was no ball and chain on a Morning Star.
Nope.
It was basically a spiked mace. That's all it was.
I mean, you could argue that it's rumored that William Wallace had a weapon similar, where it was basically a long chain with a hoop you'd hold onto and a big ball at the end. You could argue that could be a flail, but I don't even know if that's historically accurate.
Those sort of things would not have been used in a mass battle.
Well, do you remember watching Ivanhoe, the movie from, I guess, the 1960s or 50s, with the final where he has to do the trial by combat?
I must have seen it, but
I've never heard of it.
That's the one where they use what a lot of us think of as the it's a ball and chain, but I don't think that. But again, that they use it and it looks really cool in the combat. I don't think that it actually existed in real life, but that's what everyone thinks of.
There's some evidence that there may well have been a ceremonial weapon for Eastern European soldiers. I believe sort of Eastern Europe they were certainly trained in these sort of weapons, but I in a mass battle it would have been utterly ineffective. But maybe in mock battles, hand-to-hand duels and training, it may well have been used there. There's some evidence for that, but
But let's pull a Saxius and derailing them.
Well,
Anyway,
to be fair, we are playing a game where people are throwing fireballs and lightning bolts. So.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that argument. I don't. I hate that. There's dragons in it, therefore anything is no. Don't make that argument because that completely shatters.
I have to make the argument only because we're in a fantasy setting, rather than a high fantasy setting, whether we like it or not. I know we all like.
I would argue that that grounding it more and making it make more sense is more important in a fantasy setting. You have to take less liberties with the more fantastical elements, otherwise people won't believe it.
I like a grittier setting as I get older. I'm just saying, when you get a bunch of people arguing about minutia of weapons, when most everyone's just like, I just want something that looks somewhat cool that I can use in combat. I'm like that. That's what I'm referring to.
I'll concede to that.
We've all got different levels where we can suspend disbelief, haven't we? So
yes.
The next bit, I really like the next section in Unearthed Arcana, where it's all about magic user spell books and traveling spell books.
Right.
I think that adds depth to the magic user, but also it makes it more difficult for a magic user to be a walking arsenal at high levels. It makes them think more. I think it's fine. It's absolutely fine.
I liked it just because most time players only are getting a few. You don't need everything.
No.
I liked it for that reason, though. To be fair, I think when I was playing at the time, is if you knew the spell, you could cast it, and we just subtracted whatever was there, which is similar to what a 5e sorcerer does now. But back in the day, it was. But that way, you got to use your utility spells. Oh, I'll use knock. I'll use featherfall. It wasn't all combat spells because you're like, oh, I can use this spell at any time. That's what we did. I know that was a common house rule.
Right.
I'm being called out by Praxis.
I'm going through chat at the moment, and I see people are arguing and chatting about drow and stats. I'm going to pick David up here. Right. Okay. Animals in AD&D had animal intelligence, which was 1. And I would also argue that I've seen this quite a few times, people arguing that when in later editions where monsters are given full sets of stats, you look at 5th edition where every monster has got strength, intelligence, wisdom, everything all listed.
Yep.
Those only exist, in my opinion, to provide the DM with mechanics for saving throws, initiative, and to see how attack rolls are calculated.
Yeah.
And skill rolls. I don't believe they are there to be direct comparisons with humans.
And didn't the old monster manual used to specify what the intelligence would mean?
It did, yes, it did.
And I think that was important. I agree. I didn't mind characters having a 6 or something like that because that to me made sense. But if you were like a 5 and going, you can barely think. What was that at? There was a low. I can't remember all of them, but it's like you can be somewhat cunning, but you're not really going to understand most basic language. So.
It's like in 5th edition, for example, there were some apes that have got some, they're given intelligence of about 4 or 5. And I've seen people argue that they can't speak, so that a human with 4 or 5 intelligence can't speak. And that's I think that's nonsense. I think that's absolute nonsense.
Well, a dog was a 3 or something like that?
Dog. Animal intelligence in AD&D was 1. Semi-intelligent was 2 to 4. And I think dogs were semi-intelligent. I think. I'm not 100%. And low intelligence was 5 to 7. But a human with intelligence 3 can speak. They can't read. They can't even learn to read.
Oh, yeah.
But they can't write. But they can speak.
Yeah.
They might not be the most fluent. They might not use anything more than monosyllabic words.
They might be from Bristol.
They might, yeah, or Norwich or somewhere like that, or Ireland.
Or Ireland. Yeah, beat you to it. No, even in the Apocalypse game I'm designing, like people with 3 to 5 intelligence, they basically speak a communication known as primitive. They can still speak. They're just fairly unintelligent.
Yeah.
You know, like something like you'd hear from like a feral child, like grunts and growls, but they can still communicate.
Okay, so Blaine says it's an odd contrast. Should PC use a favourable dice method for stats as they're exceptional, or the ones that merely survive and level up the exceptional ones, regardless of what stats they roll? I'm in the camp of being the ones that survive are the exceptional ones.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't think first level characters start out as being particularly exceptional, seeing as a guard is usually considered to be most soldiers slightly better than normal men, but they've got a slight
Well, they were still 0 level, though. I mean, first level was a little bit higher, but I agree. I think that the problem was that the stats were weighted too early in the game, and they should have been weighted more towards later. And to be fair, that's why I kind of left D&D. Is as I started finding other systems, I was like, oh, here, let me go over to those where your stats can be increased. But I think that it would have been better to have them start like something like DCC has, where you kind of crap at the beginning, and then when you work up, there's a big difference between 0 and first level, and there was in first edition too, because now no longer could you be attacked at 10th level fire got 10 attacks against 0 level creatures.
It was half hit die or less creatures, I believe.
It was under 1 hit die, so 1 minus 1.
Yeah.
So goblins.
Yeah. Yeah. That later got expanded to 1 hit die or less, but yeah, basically. This is kind of the reason why I prefer get to 10 and start again, because by the time you get to 10, you've reached the age where you've kind of retired. And you can kind of avoid this whole my character is too old to not get stat increases, so it's just
Here we go. Michael has come up with a point here. Without method 5, Cavaliers would be very rare, since almost no one would qualify. Yep. And that is precisely why you should. That's precisely the point. It's precisely the point. You should not be able to say, I'm going to play a Cavalier. You should, if you roll good stats, you might be able to choose it. I'd say of about 50 characters rolled up for my last AD&D campaign, 2 of them had stats that were good enough to become Cavaliers. One of them played a monk, one of them played a Cavalier. There we go. That's out of about 40 characters.
I think you said in your bard video you said the same thing. They got stats for a bard, played a Cavalier or a monk. Yeah. Unfortunate.
Well, and to be fair for the bard, is you could have raised your stats over time because you only had a dual class. So you only had a dual class from fighter to get to a thief. And then from thief, you could try to raise your stats up to then become a bard. It's not, because you could find things like the tomes and stuff like that to increase your stats over time.
Sure, but I prefer the geek method where you kind of have to declare your intentions to become a bard at first level. So if you don't have the stats at first level, you can't become one.
I didn't feel that way. To me, once you got to your dual class, you could figure out what you wanted.
But I subscribe that you don't need to dual class because you can't dual class to rules as written. You can't because half elves can't dual class. Humans can, and bards can be half elves and humans.
Well, half elves would be a special case. But
I think we're gonna call this now pulling a Saxius, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do need Daddy Saxius here to sit in the corner and with a whip to drag us all back on top of
and I'll just be bad cop and ignore him. So
yeah. Grand Admiral Ahab, do I use the level restrictions for NPCs? Yes, I do.
Well, level NPCs, having a 7th or 9th level in first edition was something big.
Yeah,
it was not.
Of course it was.
Hey, look, I kind of like in how DCC would put down your percentages, And I think that's very similar to how you have in AD&D, which is why I get mad in you're talking about against the slavers and things. Oh, you suddenly get attacked by 10 ninth level characters. What? Why would your NPCs that are 9th level be going out trying to hunt you down? They have better things to do, like, build castles. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what else do we have besides the weapons in the DM section? Try and bring us back on topic.
Right. I was just going through we did prompt a discussion on flails and weapons and whatever. And Michael again says the spellbook rules are great. Praxis has got to know you, DK. DK saying I would argue is like saying the sky is blue. Yeah, well, we're in Britain. The sky's grey.
Yeah, I'm in Ireland. It's grey with a chance of cloudy.
It's like Germany. Germany. The only time I saw the sun is whenever it was snowing. That's what it felt like.
That's ironic, actually.
Michael backs up the issue here with the thing here with the traveling spellbooks and the spellbooks. Yes, yeah, it's perfect. Love it. Oh, pardon me.
That was a chair. That was his chair, folks.
It wasn't the chair. No, it was my dinner.
I was trying to save you, dude. I was trying to save you, Christ.
I'm 50 years old. I'm allowed to do those things.
Are you though? Are you?
I'm
yes. Actually, when you get older, you just stop caring. That's why.
Yeah.
You're like, what are you gonna do? Cancel me? Like, look, I'm almost near retirement. What are you gonna do? So yeah.
Okay, I farted on the stream. So what? High level magic user is most powerful in their tower. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you attack a magic user's tower at your peril.
And with all their flying monkeys and their golems and their traps. Yeah, good luck, buddy. Yeah. Good luck.
And I've heard about the Great Bugbear Hunt. I've heard it's very, very good. So it's one I do intend to seek out from somewhere. Yep. So it looks like, I mean, Savage World's describing it as I was in terms of the number is there for checks. For me, for monsters, that's for all stats. I'd say a goblin with 10 strength, a human with 10 strength will be physically still more robust.
Yeah.
I don't go with the IQ divided by 10 thing. Because I'm not going to go into modern things in terms of certain ailments, but I have a high IQ, but I have a low wisdom. That's me personally. That's so I in D&D terms, I'd probably be on that. I'd be intelligence 16, wisdom 5.
And I'd be intelligence 10 and wisdom 6.
Oh, you're right. Okay. And it's hang on.
No, you know what? I have to disagree with Michael Rooney here, saying if anyone rolled a 17 plus, they'd be loath to put that in charisma. Do you know how many fights you get out of by having a 17 charisma if you use those reaction rolls?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of DMs underplayed that, though, didn't they? A lot of DMs really underplayed the effect of charisma.
And your retainers and everything else, the effect of morale. Because looking at the old, I'm talking about the white box when I saw it being read, the expectation was the party didn't just go in, they went in with like 2 or 3 followers each.
Yeah.
And so they came in really.
I've tried to extol the virtue of retainers on parties over the years, and I just get players who don't want to share their treasure with retainers.
What else are you going to spend it on?
Well,
Training.
I mean,
I use
to be
training
fair,
rules.
if
They're broken
they
to
don't
level
have,
6.
they don't have to share their treasure with anyone, because if they die, they get 0 treasure.
That's true. That is true. That's true. Anyway, I'm going to pull the praxis again, and move on to the next page. They've added in the acquisition of illusionist spells, which was necessary, because illusionists were missing from the Dungeon Master's Guide in terms of spell gaining, and there's illusionist cantrips as well. I wish more people played illusionists because I like them. They've added in costs of magic user and illusionist spell casting, which is good. Illusionist spell books, yep, that's fine. Then there's a section on defining more spell effects, mainly with a reference to a lot of the new spells, but there's also mention of some other ones. If you know, at the beginning of the Dungeon Master's Guide, it talks there's some information to Dungeon Masters regarding adjudication of spells, so that's all absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that in the book. We may move on to clarification of the effects of darkness in combat. That's fine. Social class and rank. Clearly, this bit has been shoehorned in for the Cavalier. I don't mind it though, because if you're playing a medieval campaign, I think this could be very, very flavorful.
Important.
The only thing I would add here, though, is that I would like my party to be of a similar level, because I don't think if you're playing an authentic campaign, that upper class characters would like to be seen associating with riffraff.
Well, I think the other problem with it is if you're playing a realistic campaign, the higher class would automatically be bossing all the lower classes.
Yes.
And
that's the point. Yeah.
But I don't want like I've already made it clear. I don't particularly like characters that do all the bossing. I think the paladin and the barbarian were already attracted the wrong type of players.
Since I play in a game like Lion and Dragon where that is important, there are benefits that upper class gentry don't have that lower class do, because the lower classes, although they will show deverance, that they have to obey their superiors, they don't have to tell them everything. Like, you could just say that, yeah, peasants won't tell everything to their lords. Like, if they know someone is poaching from the lord's land, they're not going to tell, because that not only will that get someone they love killed, but there might be reprisals against everyone else. But a thief who's a peasant or lower, maybe even a villain, would know. They'd listen to them. So you can implement this.
Lion and Dragon has a different feel to D&D, though, in that sense, I think.
And to be fair, for a lot of this is, and this is why I look at it as it's more of a Tolkien-esque rather than trying to be a realistic setting, because players are expected to travel and wander. And back in those days, if you were wandering and you weren't a pilgrim, if anything bad happened, they blamed it on you. I mean, there's a lot more. You're right. There's a big social aspect that a lot of players don't want to deal with as much as I want to go kill monsters. And to be fair, most of D&D is not. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
It's not centered in the civilized parts. Is it's like in the Keep in the Borderlands. You're on the edge. Where your social class may matter when you go in and talk to the keep, whoever's in the keep, but outside of that, orcs and ogres and elves, they don't care about what social class you are. You're out. A bear doesn't care if I'm upper social class or lower social class. He cares if I can run.
There is the question that in a dangerous world, and if you were born into money, would you be going out risking your life unless you had some specific reason for it? It's originally D&D.
To be fair,
D&D, the idea of D&D originally was you were meant to you were nothing more than a group of you were temple and tomb robbers when it all first started out. You go in and you're nicking treasure from from places to make yourselves more powerful. That was how D&D started. And I think this sort of bringing in of even this sort of like these political classes, I think it's just taking a little bit away from that essence of what D&D originally was.
Well,
yeah, because to be fair, I'm not trying to be cruel or anything, but it really this approach, how from what I understand of D&D's approach, standard D&D's approach to class, it comes at it from a very American-centric mindset where social class just does not matter. In Europe, even today, there is still that class divide that exists.
Oh, true. Very
true.
All
over Western Europe. Even today, you can still feel the class distinctions. And it's easier for a European to understand this stuff. At least I think.
But I mean, remember, most of these things are also based off of the history of where people were of lower class that moved up. King Arthur, he was not a high class when you actually look at it. When he was he was a knight, but he was not a high-end upper class like a duke or a prince or anything. Oedipus Rex, even if you were the son of the king, you tended to be on an outskirt or an outsider. I mean, that's part of what they did for when they were looking at it. Now, the other part is that when you start, look at where the characters are. They're sort of started to intend to be a man-at-arms and work their way up, which did happen. Would work their way up to knight and then lord. And that's one thing I did miss about from first and second. Going from first to second is they removed those titles that came in.
Oh yeah.
And the idea was that you started off kind of, you're kind of riffraff or maybe a little upper. You're from like the lower upper class, which meant that your parents were probably broke. You were a broke knight. You were things like that, and then you would work your way up to become a hero.
See, here's the thing. It depends. With the Arthur thing, it depends on the interpretation of the Arthurian legend. In like the Historica Britannicae, he was the son of Uther Pendragon, the High King of Britain. So he was of noble lineage. In the Morte d'Arthur, he was raised by Sir Kay's father, who was a landed knight or a baron. And the concept of being broke knights, like a broke knight, because most nobility in medieval Europe, their wealth came from the land, not from heritage. A lot of people were dirt poor, but they made money through taxes.
Well, so, I know, but a lot of knights were kind of broke, or you were a second son. If you were a second son, you got nothing. I mean, that's kind of the idea of D&D. You were not the first son. You were not this. You were the second son, and you would have to join the military or go out and adventure. And that's why you had the conquistadors all coming over from to the New World. Because what else did they have? They weren't inheriting. And I think that was the idea of D&D in its original form was, this is the way that you're going. First son inherits, they're going to stay at home. Second son is the one that goes out and joins the military. Third son joins the clergy. And if you're fourth or fifth, I don't know what you do.
You go begging. I was going to say, congratulations, David. I'm guessing you're going to be writing a lot of stuff for your blog. But from my family members who've retired, they haven't had much spare time. The next table I'm going to move quickly on is circumstances of birth and parents' marital status, which I think is pointless. Just let the player decide what they want there.
Yeah.
If a player wants to be a character to be only child, just okay. It does just say. Yeah, it does say virtually all such decisions must be made by the individual dungeon master. Just leave it to the players. Leave it to the player. Let them decide whether their parents were married or whether they've had 12 kids or what. Then we move on to the magic items. And here in the magic items section, there's a lot of good stuff in here. A lot of interesting new magic items. But there are definite signs of power creep. Definite signs of power creep, because a lot of the new magic items are very, very potent or very silly. I'm going to point specifically to things like we now have full plate armor +4
Oh God.
on the tables. We have a sword +6 Holy Avenger on the sword tables. I know they're rare, but it just gives players the idea of becoming ever more powerful beyond where they were in the original first edition books. But in general, the new magic items are pretty good. There are some silly ones. There are some, where is it? Anything armor, and I don't know. I know there's only a 1% chance of it popping up on that table, but
what does it do exactly? That armor you just mentioned.
Let me find it. It's
Does
something to do.
You pick whatever armor it's going to be? Or?
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah.
Huh.
You basically choose, and I think you can choose every day or something.
Oh God. Jeez. Okay.
On command, it will become any other sort of normal magic armor.
Okay.
So you can change leather into plate, into chain. It will never form into a specific type of armor more than once, which is, I suppose, is okay. And the change to a non-special type of armor will last for a day. And it does have a default setting, but I know I'm some of these are a bit. They do get a bit daft. But in general, the tables are now a lot deeper, and a lot of items that became quite standard first appeared here. There were certain potions and certain rings and rods and staves that have become very commonplace. So, and a lot of these were lifted from adventures. There are certain items in here, for example, I know first appeared in Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, that they've been brought into these tables. Mm. Yes, Jason has. Jason knows about David's blog. Yeah, exactly. Freedom. And nice to see you chatting, Michael. I don't know if you're still there, but nice to see you getting involved. When I did my polls on best AD&D modules going back about 3 years ago, I know Michael was one of the regular voters then. I got quite involved in those. The art in Unearthed Arcana is, I believe it's all by Jeff Easley, or at least mostly by Jeff Easley. And Jeff Easley was when he got it right, he got it very right. Some of the art, like that one, where is it? There it is.
Oh, that looks really good.
It's pinched from S4. It's copied from Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, but it's a Jeff Easley piece, and it's lovely. It's a really nice piece. That is the Demonomicon of Igwilf from S4.
Oh yeah, isn't that there also? She also named Tasha.
Yes,
if I remember correctly.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not all Jeff Easley art. I mean, there's that one there, but that looks like a Tim Truman piece. At the start of the Dungeon Masters section. And some of Truman's work was quite good. That's quite a nice piece. There we are.
Ooh, that's really good.
Yeah. So the art in there was pretty good. There wasn't a lot of it. It wasn't as ubiquitous as it was in other.
Well, and to be fair, the art kept getting better and better. I mean, if you look at the first edition Monsters Manual, you're like, what in the world?
I'm a big fan of Errol Otis and Dave Trampier, but the other artists were very hit and miss. Very hit and miss.
I when I read like FMag, a lot of the art in that book is entirely one artist, and it's all consistent and all looks great. It's on par, I think, with some of the stuff I've seen. Like the Emerald, the Chaotic, the scene of the elf on the horse. Yeah, it's on par with that piece, and that's one of my favorite pieces of art from D&D.
Yeah. Well, that's
I love that art.
That's a Trampier image.
Nice.
Right. Bit more. It's a shame they added illusionist read magic. Yeah, illusionist didn't need read magic.
I think a lot of it was that the idea was that the specialty classes were supposed to take over from the main ones. And I think, that was the problem that I had with a lot of it, is that it invalidated, like a ranger and a fighter. Rangers and paladins invalidated the fighter. The clerics still kept their worth because druids didn't have the same spells. But illusionist and magic users, well, if you had an illusionist, you also wanted a magic user. So, it was, but.
I mean, if I remember correctly, do rangers and paladins also benefit from the 18/00 strength, or is it just bog standard fighters?
I believe that they got the same thing. They were considered a fighter class.
Right.
They were fighting subclass, yeah.
Right. Okay. But I mean, like the whole, like the way, like Aaron the Pedantic points out, is that the reason why the ranger and the paladin, I know mechanically they're just to make the humans more interesting because only humans can play them. At least before UA came along, it was like
half elves could be rangers.
Yeah. Basically, it was kind of like they were the exemplars of the fighter. They were the best that a fighter could be, and if they strayed from the path or like they messed up, they broke their code, their punishment was that they lost their power. I think that was kind of the justification for it. Like
it was. Yeah, you did. What happened is if you broke it, then you became just a normal fighter. But I still felt that in certain ways it should have been an aspirational, or what people call prestige class, rather than you getting it at first level. That's something I think that you should have worked your way up through certain levels, and then they should have said, once you reach this level, then you can select one of these others. And that's why that would
be an interesting way of looking at it. Right, the next, I think that we might get to the end of the book if we don't get too distracted. I think we are going to get to. We are. Okay, we're on to the appendices now, and they attempted to fix weaponless combat by bringing in pummeling, grappling, and overbearing rules. And I think these rules are better, though I have to admit, I improvise. If I'm running a game, I don't stick to any of the grappling rules or any of the weaponless combat rules in either UA or the Dungeon Master's Guide. I just make it up on the fly. I don't think I just have hit rolls, and I just try and make it flavorful and ask the player what he's trying to do, and I just try and I make up a roll there and then to see what happens.
I think there's an age thing too. From when we start looking at it, is I'm 48, and when I was young, I wanted all the rules for everything. As I get older, I'm going, no, I'm not going to flip the book and find for the exact rule. This is what happens, and it makes it much more flavorful. And to be honest, I think a lot of players enjoy it more because you're not limiting them, you're not confining them, as long as it seems to make sense. That most players are okay with it.
Yeah, it's like honestly, it's more freeing just to say, for them to say, I want to grapple them. Okay, make your attack roll. I'll make a saving throw. If they fail to save, they're grappled or knocked prone or pushed back or whatever. Because like gatekeeping it behind an ability or a feat or a class feature, whatever, that doesn't give players more options. It takes them away.
The mechanics already exist in a very basic way that they can be adapted. You can use saving throws, you can use dexterity checks, you can use hit rolls, you could have both people rolling open doors or bend bars checks, and whoever does best. Those mechanics already exist, and just adapt them and just make them flavorful and just twist them. I mean, the other night we were playing Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, as it's that adventure, and one of the regular contributors, Captain, was playing the part of the infamous Ned, because he's played the adventure before, and he backstabbed the party and was trying to get away, and one of the characters was able to move more quickly than him. Caught up with him and said, okay, I'm going to try and grapple him. And because he grabbed him, Ned managed to escape. But another character said, well, does that mean I've now been able to catch him up? Yes, of course, he's been delayed. And all I did I just did hit rolls, dexterity checks, and so they were able to catch up with him and eventually kill him. But it's just done on the fly. The mechanics already exist there. There's no need for going into, as you say, when we were younger, we wanted to have affirmation. We wanted a book to say you can do that. But as we get older, we don't need a book to say we can do it.
By the way, David Leonard has bounced.
Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Right.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, though, and I think this is something with power gamers, and it has to do with some age and some other things. I remember when I was young, and I think this had to do with the rules lawyering, being a rules lawyer as well, was I did not trust the GM. I thought it was the GM versus the players. And as I get older, it's not about that. It's like, what makes a cool story?
Yeah.
If I die, I die. If I do this, we're going to have laughs. In some cases, I've had more fun by my failures than my critical success. Yes, the critical success is nice, but boy, this was in the 5e, though. I had a barbarian that failed the charm multiple times up to the point that it was a harpy and we were on a flying ship. My character kept running towards the harpy as she's flying off away from the ship. I went off the side of the ship. The only thing that saved me was I said, well, can I jump and grab the harpy? And my friend's like, yeah. And I succeeded in that role, but that gave a whole other thing. But we would have never done that if I had always succeeded in all those charm rolls. We would have missed that whole experience of failures allowing us to get to that point.
Yeah, and it made the whole game more fun.
Yes.
I mean, I think on the last stream we were talking about how to be a good player, and my number one was trust for the DM. Trust the DM to give you a good game, and I think that is something that is vital. And youngsters do tend to have a more. Of course, there are some older players who can be quite combative and quite difficult, but we tend to mellow with age and experience. Right. The next thing. Okay, there were more sort of other non-lethal combat techniques and things in there. Subdual damage, vanquishing, and disarming. I've never used them. Never bothered. I make things up.
The only time I'll ever allow subdual is if it's a blunt weapon, usually like a club or a blackjack. Anything else, it's a weapon designed to kill.
You can use the flat of a sword, I guess, but I don't mind people saying I'm going to try and knock somebody out with the pommel of a sword. They're going to cause some damage, but it's all very situational. We then had some more gods.
Were these the non-human gods?
Yes, they were. Yes, the gods of the dwarves, Clangeddin, Silverbeard, and Dumathoin, and then we had some gods of the elves, and I preferred going with gods of a setting, and using, for example, the Greyhawk gods and ignoring all of these. I've got deities and demigods. I never used it. I preferred having. I use it, I suppose, for a bit of inspiration, but I prefer. If I was playing Greyhawk, I'd use the Greyhawk Pantheon. Simple as that.
If I were to use a polytheistic pantheon for a setting, I'd probably go with the Greek ones, because one, I know them the best, so it's easiest for me to implement them, and just say, hey, the elves like Artemis and Pan, the dwarves like Hephaestus and I don't know, Hades, and the humans like everyone. It's, and the halflings like Hestia because of the hearth and farming and
Anyway, I'm flicking through the gods and I've left this comment up here from Jeb because he mentions the pole arms section.
Oh, Gygax loved his pole arms. He loved his pole arms.
This is something at work where someone said you're slicing the bologna a little too thin. At which point do you have to? I mean, what was it? The back of the player's handbook had all these sets of pole arms. Then he gives you even more pole arms. Just thinking, Look, the difference
I mean,
is a D8 or a D10.
Now, I think these 5 pages. I mean, as you can probably tell from my opinions of various bits of Unearthed Arcana, I've been up and down, about 50-50. I like that, don't like that. I like that, don't like that. These 5 pages of Unearthed Arcana have given me more satisfaction and more pleasure in owning this book than anything else in the book, because I love pole arms, and to see pictures and to finally understand what a Vulge Guizarm looked like in the days before the internet was just wonderful, because they look nothing like I imagined them. Now I know what a bill hook looks like, and I okay, there are variants on them, but it gave you an idea. And of course, in 1985, we didn't have the internet. I didn't have books on weapons, and these pages, those pictures, there we go. Look at all of those, aren't they?
You know, no. For some reason, I kept thinking that was in the player's handbook, but now you're showing that. Now I remember them being,
It's
exactly the same thing. What are
pole
these?
arms?
This is so cool. Yeah,
pole arms were the best weapons on the battlefield. Changed my mind.
But
apart from guns,
I think D&D mechanically undersold the polearm, because okay, maybe they're not the best thing to take into a dungeon, but certainly I would have given I would have given the bill, the halberd, and
the Bector-Corban.
The Bector-Corban, yes. I'd have given those 3 some mechanical advantages when used in a formation by trained footmen, because those were 3 weapons that completely turned the course of history.
I mean, I would say just at least from what I like, when I was thinking about how to make the Bector-Corban cool for a story I was going to write, but I never got around to it. I was going to say that a character who used the hook on the Bector-Corban to actually trip people up, and that's actually how they were used. They actually used the Bector-Corban hook to do that sort of thing, not just to stab people with it. And you can do that. Like if you want to do like a trip attack or a grapple check with it, I'd say, yeah, you're using your Bector-Corban, you get a +1 to the roll. There you go, because that's what it's designed to do. Simple.
Yeah. I fully agree with you, though. I may not give a +1. I'd say, do you have a weapon that's supposed to do that? And then I give probably plus or minus. But I mean, but you're right. But there was the same thing of whenever they talk about pole arms. I mean, it's basically a 10-foot pole with a blade at the end.
The Bector-Corban is a bit shorter, but yeah, basically.
Those blades evolved, though. I mean, and they became personal Swiss Army knives and can openers and all sorts. And
essentially, they're all the same weapon. I think a lot of them were based off the Danish axe or something originally, and then they just kind of
they realized that they generally realized that the cutting and general denting potential of an axe was so much better against heavy armor than the sword. And I tell you, by about 1500 AD, if 2 knights faced off and one pulled out a sword, the other pulled out a Bector-Corban, the one with the Bector-Corban would be laughing.
Well, I mean,
because
also look at the what was it, the East? I don't know how to pronounce it. The Estoc, which was basically it looked like a sword except it was round with a point at the end, because they knew that bladed weapons really weren't going to cut through it. But the poleaxe is the one that I was always surprised that was not the weapon of choice for cavaliers.
Well, they didn't even have the poleaxe as we know it really in AD&D, and the nearest we've got really is like the Lucerne hammer and Bector-Corban, which again aren't poleaxes, but they're similar.
That's as close we're going to get. Yeah,
as close as we're going to get. Yeah.
And the shields made it so everyone wanted the one-handed weapon, because unless you had the two-handed sword, which only give you like a little bit of extra damage, that extra armor class is worth a lot more. And
yes.
that's one of those. Now, to be fair, this is one of the, this is why I switched over to different systems out there. That was coming in, but I said, oh, okay. And I always disliked the fact that the shield was used as an offensive weapon. It wasn't just used to block. It was used to back someone. Is that should have always been counted as, and I think they did this in 2E, where they started having the shield and sword. But that should have always been a two weapons attack, and the shield gives you the ability to block, which I guess would be the armor class. But I always thought that was kind of lacking in those. You know, a lot of us grew up thinking D&D was, oh, this is an accurate representation. And you start looking back on, you know, the jousting and things like that. I forgot what his name is. The one in England that did the stuff with Todd's Workshop, if you remember.
Oh.
Well, Todd's Workshop has probably enlightened us more about actual weapons and how they worked than a lot of other
on the
stuff.
YouTube channel. Yeah,
yes.
I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I watch a ton of historical stuff, you know, like Shad and Lindy Beige and Scholagrim and things like that. I'm just fascinated by when they talk about the implementation of weapons and their place in the culture. It really helps with the role play stuff.
Yeah,
at least as far as I'm concerned. Yep.
I mean, look at the longbow. The longbow is, you know, but when they were using that against the armor, that was really enlightening.
I mean, yeah, just getting a Bodkin arrow would be really useful against more heavier plates. Now, obviously, they wouldn't always go through, but
for me, it was the realization that it was the arrows disintegrating that caused more damage than them hitting directly, because the ricochets.
And the silk that was put over the armor to prevent the shatter from going up into the. I thought that was.
The fluting that they put on armor.
No, it was the no. They have silk that went over the armor. And
you mean like tabards? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, like cloth and stuff. Nice.
Yeah, well, and they thought it was just for recognition, but when they were shooting the arrows, and the arrows would shatter. And what it would do is it would prevent the pieces from flying up into your face and eyes, and through your visor.
And they had a slight curvature on the breastplate at the top near the throat as well, just to protect against that sort of thing.
I mean, even on the bassinet or bassinet with the pig snout, the fact that the eyes like jut out into like these little hovels above the helmet. By about half an inch. I would imagine that was also put on there to prevent ricochets as well, because you know, they're like, it's like the hole to see out of in the eyes is like an inch away from your face. So it's nuts the kind of innovations they have.
Well, I mean, sorry. Yes, we're talking about weapons. If you've looked at the armor that they had for Alexander the Great, that cloth armor. I've seen videos on it. I've actually read the people did research on that up in Wisconsin of where they were shooting arrows at it and what it would stop, and that was pretty impressive, actually.
It was, yeah. But it was the whole layer effect as well, wasn't it? You'd have separate layers, and one layer would take off so much that there'd be not enough left to get through pierce a whole second layer, all that sort of stuff. It's amazing what they knew.
It's like modern Templar, but except that they used it where they glued everything together using these linen, where they just used linen. Big difference.
Well, after hundreds of years of warfare and experimentation, you tend to figure stuff out, like, you know.
Yeah, true.
Caesar crossing the Rhine in a month. We still, I don't think, can replicate it the way he did it back then in the time frame. But they knew how to do it.
Wait a minute.
Was it a week?
He did it.
I thought it was a month.
No. He crossed the Rhine.
That's even.
Built the bridge across and back. I'm going. I can't get my modern contractors to get and just.
No.
I mean, I can get a modern contractor in most cases to even get the accuracy that they built the aqueducts at. So.
Yeah. Oh God.
I mean.
So are we all in agreement?
Else,
are we all in agreement that this last chapter of Unearthed Arcana is wonderful because it details all of the polearms, and that D&D did not do enough for polearms?
Yes, it's a shame Gygax didn't do it initially, but at least he made up for that mistake.
Yeah, right. We have finished the book. We have got to the end of the book.
Nice. Now I want to buy it.
So I'm going to go now back to the comments. People started talking about various magic items. I'll probably do stream on magic items at some point, but Merlin's spoon. There we go. Yes.
See, that one I actually like because that one doesn't overpower a game in most cases.
It doesn't.
Sometimes it would, but I'd probably limit it that it works once a week or something, so characters could still starve. But
I'm going to disagree with David here. I think Bill Willingham did some good pieces and some terrible ones. I think his cover, for example, of Secret of Bone Hill is excellent. I think his cover of Against the Giants is appalling. Jeff D, I don't think was good as a cover artist using color. I think he's done some very, very good pictures of scary bad guys, but he overused superhero muscles grossly. But that works fine for bad guys. But when he depicts magic users with six packs and all that sort of thing, it's cartoony. The feature artist in Fiend Folio, I think, was great at portraying the odd, the insane, the weird, but his humanoids were very, very samey, and all had these funny overbites and awkward faces, which was a little bit weird.
Which was who did the art? I don't know which artist was the one that had the undead that would separate from the body and bring out all the internal organs. I thought that was an excellent artist.
Yes, that's in Fiend Folio. That's the Penangalan Fiend Folio. That's a nice piece. Yes, yeah, he was great at those sort of pictures. And there's a picture of a party fighting a Grell in that book as well, which is a marvelous picture.
Is Grell the brain with the beak?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Holloway and Darlene. Holloway's work on Paranoia was magnificent, and he did a few of my favorite covers. He did the cover to Pharaoh, he did the cover to the Lost City. They were absolutely superb. Darlene, of course, is responsible for the Greyhawk map, and she does some lovely line drawings in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think Holloway's work inside modules ruined the tone of a few of them. I think he's too comical, too not serious enough for some of them. One of the weakest parts, for example, of the Pharaoh module is the fact that it's all Holloway inside. It just doesn't work. Darlene, it's a great Greyhawk map, good artwork in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't like her cover art at all. I don't know if that's going to offend anybody, but just be.
What cover art did she do?
If you look, I think In Search of the Unknown was a Darlene piece. Certainly the back cover.
Really?
In Search of the Unknown. The brown cover. I believe the back cover is a Darlene
right.
piece. I'm not sure about the front. I think the front cover might be as well, but I'm not 100%. I don't have it to hand, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have the Goodman Games one, so I can try and find the art.
And Dave Sutherland, Jason mentions Dave Sutherland. I will say now, I think Sutherland was one of the weaker artists. Yes, he did a few good pieces, but in general, his other ones I tend to overlook. I much prefer Trampier and Otis to Sutherland. Have you found the reference to Darlene at all?
Yeah, I'm looking in here. It says cover art, Jim Rosloff is the front and Darlene is the back. So yeah,
it's the back. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
Rosloff was one of the weaker artists as well. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we discussed. A few people have obviously joined the stream a little later on. We've discussed. Yeah, Unearthed Arcana is basically a compilation of mostly dragon stuff.
I remember it having Dragon Magazine stuff like the Cavalier and the Barbarian, but didn't include like a lot of other stuff I think out there. It just seemed to bring a compilation of things all spread out to various things. But if you ever got the well, I know that you didn't get it, but the Dragon Magazine compendiums, like 1 through 5, they had some pretty interesting things in there as well that I liked. One of them was a critical hit table and a few others.
I hate that critical hit table. Absolutely detest it.
Is that the one? Is that the one from Arduino?
I don't remember. It had what it was that your odds of getting a critical hit were based on your percentage. So whatever you exceeded your hit, if I remember correctly, or you hit. So you start with 1%, and as it went up, you could get a critical hit. So if you rolled a 20, but you had to get a 5, get a 15, get a 5% chance of doing a critical hit, and then you rolled, and then you also had a critical fumble on there as well. I don't know if that's the one that you're thinking of. I thought it was well done because it really skewed. It didn't give you automatic critical hits. If you rolled a 20, you didn't get an automatic critical hit. You got whatever percentage it was, and then after that you would roll. And I thought that they were well done, but it slowed the game down. So
yes, yeah, and any mechanic that significantly slows the game down, if it doesn't significantly add to the fun, isn't worth using, in my opinion. And I think it's better without. I went through the demi-human gods in the appendix very, very quickly. Because I didn't use them. I'd rather use gods from a setting than generic gods.
Well, at the time they only had 2 settings, maybe 3. I'm trying to remember exactly what everything came out.
They had Blackmoor, Mystara, Greyhawk.
Well, for AT&T it was only Greyhawk at the time, if I remember correctly.
It was Greyhawk. There was Blackmoor was sort of unofficial.
No, Greyhawk was OD&D. They had a supplement for it.
But the Greyhawk box set came out for first edition as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. That's what you mean.
That Greyhawk box set I thought was excellent.
It was superb. Yeah, it was beautiful.
And I kind of, and when they got rid of it, I felt like I'd been cheated. When Gygax left, they went over with the Forgotten Realms. And
Yeah.
But they added a bunch of stuff later on, so I mean,
1985 was when Dragonlance was appearing, and the setting book hadn't come out yet, but the world of Kryn was becoming known. Mystara was sort of growing for basic D&D. They hadn't got, I don't think they'd quite done the Gazetteers yet, which really fleshed out Mystara, but certainly it was becoming the basis for the basic and expert modules. But the only one with the real official box set for first edition at this point was Greyhawk,
right?
There were other unofficial ones. I mean, the Blackmoor. I know Blackmoor appeared in other publications, and there were some basic and expert modules that featured Blackmoor sort of stuff. Temple of the Frog, for example, stuff like that. But that I think that came out after Unearthed Arcana. Right, I'm going to draw this to a close because it is 10 to 12. 10 to 12. I thought it was going to be a shorter stream and we'd do about half of the book. We've ended up finishing the whole book, so we have covered Unearthed Arcana. People have asked me to review books, and I think this is probably the best way of doing it for this sort of book. Just have a discussion of what's in there. I give this book 6 out of 10. And it's useful only in the hands of an experienced, mature DM who knows what to cut out. When I was a 13 or 14-year-old getting it for the first time, I was not that person. It was the wrong book for me then. Do not let your kids anywhere near it. But if you're a sensible old grognard, then it's perfectly fine, because there are bits in there that are very, very nice and usable, and it has that lovely polearm bit, which is nice.
Geek has given it doctored 4 marks out of 10 just for the method 5.
It's 2 method 5 and 2 marks for adding drow as a playable race.
Okay, that's fair. That is fair.
I mean,
and yeah,
the way I look at it in retrospect is it causes far too much creep. It does have some useful things. My part of me says, "Oh, I love it because I have this nostalgic effect." But from my perspective, is it causes far too much power creep, and like you said, unless you want to cut it, I'd probably put it a 3 out of 10. Instead of making the game better, I think in some ways it made it worse.
I think at the time, looking back at the effect it had on my game at the time, 3 out of 10 would be fair. But looking at it now through the lens of someone who's been away from the hobby, tried other systems, and come back and is now quite much more old and mature and much more freeform with the rules that I use, and much more willing to adapt and not take what's black and white on the page. I think there's enough in there to give it an average 6, because there are bits and pieces in there that can be useful. Things like rules for effective armor and thief functions, things like the improved ranger, that's good. We've talked about adding flavor to weapons, which is a good thing. I don't mind low-level cavaliers. I like the new spells, a lot of the new magic items, and I like the spellbook bit. I think that's great. But you've just got to be very selective and pick what works for your game, and just be mature about it.
I think that some magic items, some of the spells, the spell books were nice. I would give the specializations a negative. The fact that Cavalier invalidates a lot of the other players, I give a negative. Barbarian, like you're saying, is it limits a lot of things. I mean, I used to like playing a paladin, but that's because everyone would be good. You know, but if you're gonna have that, then that's different. And then I really hated the racial additions. I liked them at the time, but looking back on it, is that they have invalidated a lot of the old ones, and instead of just it's caused massive power creep, which to me makes, instead of giving a lot more negatives in there that would have been in there, it seems to be taking away, and so that's why I give it a 3. Is it seems to be taking more away from the game. That if you bring it in, I'm not saying as a GM, as it should be a GM only book, but then it's up to me to say that, oh, by the way, just pick and choose in small areas and say, okay, I want to spend the full amount of money for probably about 10 pages that you'll find, 10 to 20 pages that you'll find of value.
I don't know. You've got 40 pages of spells.
My take on it is, I give it a shrugged shoulder out of 10. It is a book, and it will give you a game.
Well, it won't give you a game because it hasn't got anything. It was just an addition to the mechanics. But yeah, I mean, I might be generous in giving it a 6, but I think there's enough in there.
No, I'm just being as deliberately obtuse, neutral, and objective as possible because I know nothing about UA. Because I'm being a little shit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So once again, I'm going to say thank you to Omanal for making his debut here on the channel. Thank you for popping in. Some excellent contributions, and thank you to Dark Knight for popping in, even though he knew nothing about the source material whatsoever.
Hey!
Thank you everyone for chatting away on the chat. I do hope you've enjoyed this slice of nonsense from me at short notice on a Wednesday night. Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.